Hey there folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking Snap-on tools. That's right folks, so when I started the channel 4 years ago, I had never even heard of Snap-on tools. Today, however, I can't really get enough. So in today's video, we're gonna take a trip down memory lane and do a compilation of every unboxing that I've ever published on this channel. What you'll see in front of me right now is just a sampling of all the tools that we've managed to acquire over the years. But in this video, you're gonna see it all. From the very first screwdriver set that I ever purchased to the master wrench set and everything in between. Now this doesn't mean I'm at the end of my road in terms of buying new Snap-on tools. In fact, I've got some purchases planned at the end of April, so be sure to subscribe if you want to see the video in which I unbox those new tools. But for the folks that are new to the channel, I think this will serve as a great introduction to sort of what we do around here. We unbox new tools, we build cool stuff, and then we repeat. Say, that probably belongs on a t-shirt. In any event, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like the video. Let's get on with the compilation. So the very first thing that I picked up was this screwdriver set. Now, here's the deal. I have screwdrivers. The screwdriver is the quintessential tool. Like if you're only gonna have one thing, you're probably gonna have a screwdriver, maybe you'll have a hammer, maybe a set of pliers. But a number 2 Phillips and a flathead screwdriver can get you in and out of a lot of different situations. Now, of course, in my Vito Pro Pack, I've got some insulated screwdrivers because, you know, around the house, if I'm gonna carry that thing, maybe I'm replacing an outlet, who knows. At the workbench, I do have Milwaukee screwdrivers up on my wall. They're in a pack out holder, which, by the way, I really don't like, and I wouldn't recommend buying that specific pack out item. But I digress. I do have those, but in my Husky workbench itself, I've just got a couple crappy Amazon screwdrivers. So not something I'm super happy with, certainly not something that I expect will last a lifetime, and certainly not something that I get excited about making use of. And just as an item of note, if you didn't have a chance to watch my previous video with my first Snap-on unboxing, that's really what this is about for me. Like I said, I'm not a professional, but I want to come out to the garage and work on stuff and feel excited to do so. Right? So I know when I grab some of these Snap-on tools, it's going to get me excited. I'm going to say to myself, okay, well, I've got this number 2 Phillips. What number 2 Phillips screws can I find to tighten or loosen or what have you, right? With the Amazon stuff, listen, at the end of the day, will they perform the job just about the same way? Yes, right? But if you view it that way, you view tools as a means to an end, right? I don't view it that way. I view the tools as the end. Right? And when I told my grandmother that, she said, oh, so they're toys. I said, oh, kind of. I guess they're toys for me, but certainly I don't mean to suggest that they are for everyone. But anyway, that being said, I saw this kit. I had this on my wish list on the Snap-on website. I didn't really go in there looking for this. I didn't remember how much it cost. And of the videos I watched, they said, you know, you don't ask the price of tools on the Snap-on truck. Now, I don't know if that's really true. It seems sort of silly, but I abided by that for this trip. I didn't ask what anything cost, but I was trying to keep a mental inventory, and basically whatever you think the thing costs, just multiply it by 2 and you'll be okay. So I put this up there because I said, you know what? Let this be the last screwdriver set that I ever buy. It's got every single screwdriver that you could need, all different handle sizes. The instinct grips are one of the most praised things about Snap-on. And so I said, you know what? This is it. We're just gonna pick it up in the color that I want. If you can't tell, I'm trying to stick with the green. I did get a red plier, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But of course, for me to open this, I have to make this video. So I haven't even had a chance to play with these at all yet. But we're gonna do that right now and just see how they feel in the hand. So I'll pick up this one because this is, again, the sort of quintessential. So it's got the impact grip, the sort of triangular design. Oh, that really does. You know, again, whether I'm buying, when I bought a watch, I watched every video on YouTube about the particular watch I wanted. When I bought that truck, I knew more about that truck than the guy who sold it to me because I watched every single video that existed about that make, model, year truck. With these tools, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many hours of videos I have spent watching on these screwdrivers, Snap-on tools, general toolboxes, you name it. And to be clear, I think this lives up to the hype. The way that this feels in the hand is everything everybody said that it did on the internet. Obviously, I love the design, I love the color. That's the flathead version. And then here we've got the number 2 Phillips made in the USA. They do have the marking on the back, as I'm sure you're aware. Actually, this is a number 3 Phillips, excuse me. They do have that marking here as well. So, looks like our number 2 is right here. Yeah, that's our number 2 Phillips. So, I've got number 3, number 2, number 1, and then it came with a few hexes. This is, oh, excuse me, not hex. This is a T30. This is a T25, and I'm assuming we go from like 15 and a 10 maybe, something like that. So a few thin handle ones as well. I realize I'm making a mess, but these are little thin ones that they give you. So this is a number 1 Phillips, nice small handle if you're gonna do some smaller work. And then the smallest T handle they give you is in fact a T15. So just super cool. Of course, one of the defining characteristics of these tools is both the instinct grip, but also this little nut here. You can throw a wrench on it if you have to, and you should be able to get out of whatever jam you find yourself in. So we've got the instinct handle snap-ons. This was my big purchase of the day, but of course I bought a few other things. So wanted to get this open. I'll throw it in the box. You know, as far as the sort of blow molded case that it came in, I'm going to try and get it in the toolbox just like this. It's one of those things though that if it takes up too much space, which sometimes can happen, maybe we'll get rid of it, but for now I like it. So once I had this, I kept looking around the truck, and like I said, I really went on there for ratcheting screwdriver, which I asked him about right away. He didn't have it. And then I also said, like, hey, look, I'm looking to build my collection of green handle pliers. And it turns out he didn't have very many of them, at least so I thought. So I'm perusing, I come across these numbers. Now, these are another thing that's on my Snap-on wish list. So this is their neck light, right? But you can actually take these out, and they're magnetic, so you can stick them to whatever you want. These function as independent lights, so you can turn just this one on, or both. And then the charger that it comes with will actually allow you to charge both of these at the same time. And I've seen videos of people wearing them on their neck, but also up top here, which seems pretty cool. As I see myself in the video, I'm like, man, what am I, an astronaut? Once I saw these hanging from the ceiling, I said, you know what? I'm here, let's do it. So I picked these up, which I'm pretty excited about. I think for me, in a lot of ways, this is gonna replace the sort of stereotypical headlamp. I don't know what it is about the headlamps. I never feel like I can find the button or the setting that I'm really most interested in. These are super simple, right? You put them on, there's one button, they're on, one button, they're off, and I really appreciate that. As far as lumens and battery life and all that stuff, there's tons of videos that get into the tech specs. If that's what you're interested in, I would encourage you to check it out. But he had them in my color. He didn't have the box. So that was one thing I was, I guess, surprised about is, again, when you buy on the website, you get the boxes for everything. But in his case, as he brings tools onto the truck, again, there's only so much space. So in this case, he didn't have the box, but he gave me the charging cable and the brick that it came with. So no harm, no foul there. And so this was the second thing that I picked up. Now the third thing that I picked up is actually a consumable. So if you recall, the very first Snap-on tool I ever bought was that 5-in-1 butane powered soldering iron. I did a video about it in the OC 140 Vito Pro Pack, which you should check out. And I had been watching some videos as of late about the type of butane that you're supposed to put in there. Now, to be clear, this is all likely some sort of marketing gimmick. But the butane I've been putting in there is just the stuff you get at the gas station. And the videos that I watched suggested that you need this triple filtered butane fuel to extend its life and to get the most out of the unit. So I asked him if he had it. He said yes. And the thing that I actually really like about this is that the little piece that it comes with there, that little red bit on the end, is tailor-made for these Snap-on tools. Because one of the things about the butane from the gas station is they give you a whole bunch of tips, but none of them really fit on there that well. And you end up making a complete mess and wasting a lot of the fuel. So I picked this up. They had a bigger one, but I said for now I'm just gonna get this and then I can always get the bigger one later. The next thing that I picked up was this pry bar. So as you saw in my first unboxing, I picked up the straight pry bar. This, of course, not so straight. So this has got the little bend there at the end. I would say a little less than 45 degrees. And of course I got this in the green handle, whereas the other one is in the red handle. Now, I actually have put that red handle one in my EDC sling. So I've been carrying that every day now for a couple weeks. And I love it. I mean, like I said, these things are, solid build quality. It's everything that you would come to expect from a Snap-on tool. And like I said in that video, I mean, you could be fooled into believing that this is like a toy or a promotional item that they just sort of throw away or give away rather. But it's not. This is made in the USA just like everything else. It's got a nice handle on it. And really for my money, I don't like a lot of the pry bars that are thicker at the end because I find that for me and what I'm doing, they're just not as useful. Did I need this one just because it has this little fulcrum here, a little leverage point? No, but I was on the truck and they had it, so I picked it up. The next thing that I bought was this Comfort Grip 1/4 inch long ratchet. Now, here's the thing. At this point, I now have the chrome 1/4 inch stubby. I've got the hard handle 3/4 inch flex head, and I have this Comfort Grip 1/4 inch long handle. In truth, I'm still trying to figure out which handle I like the best. Now, to be clear, as a professional homeowner, 3/4 inch is really where I exist. So did I need to buy this 1/4 inch ratchet? Not necessarily, but he didn't have the 3/4 inch one in any of the colors that I really wanted. So I decided to pick this up. It's a non-flex head, which is something that I also did want, and just sort of add it to the collection. I think over time, as I use this and the hard handle and the chrome more and more, I will come to a decision as to what I want in my box long term. This does feel pretty good in the hand. I have a bigger hand, I would say, and so it is sort of fully consumed by that, whereas the hard handle gives me a little bit more, I think, flexibility in the hand. So we'll see. I don't know the degree to which I love the Comfort Grips. Obviously, I've seen the videos and heard the stories about they get a little dirtier, they get a little worse for the wear. But I didn't have any, so I wanted to try it out. And this was the, what are we at? 1, 2, 3. This is the 5th item that I purchased. So the quote unquote last thing that I bought before he told me about a few other things is this pen light, right? So of course this folds up, it's got a pocket clip on it, and it ultimately has 3 settings. So you turn it on the first time, you get a light out of the front. You turn it on the second time, you get the light from the top. Lights up our workspace beautifully. And then if you click it a third time, you get a light coming out of the top. So if you were to fold it down and put it in your pocket or magnetize it somewhere, you have light there. One of the things that's annoying, and our friend Doc over at Last Best Tool referenced this when he did his little review on this pen light, is that if you're in, say, this first position, so you have this front light on, and you want to just go from here to off, there's no way to do that. You actually have to click through, 2, 3, off. So that's a little annoying, but again, I'm not optimizing for efficiency in this garage, and while it's annoying, it's certainly not the end of the world. Now this has 2 magnets on it, one on the bottom and one on the back, so you can clip it to whatever you want. For me, I'm thinking the combination, right, of this around the neck light, which, to be clear, maybe I'll go with the astronaut up above here, and this. I mean, I could light up the New York City skyline here. This is probably all the lighting that I really need in this garage for a long time, of course, until Snap-on comes out with some more lights and I convince myself that I need them. Now, of course, these lights are not made in the USA. These are made in China. So as far as like quintessential Snap-on and whether or not you're getting the sort of full value of their brand, probably not, right? Because these things are priced about what you would pay for some of the USA tools, even though they're not made in the USA. And of course, the warranty is different on the electronic items, right? It's only a year versus the stuff is lifetime. So you don't get the same benefit with the lights as you do with the hand tools, but I was checking out, and I saw that he had this, and I said, you know what? I literally just watched that video I'm talking about from Doc over at Last Best Tool, which, here's the thing with his channel. It's incredible, and I've watched every video, but every time you watch one of his videos, you come up with something new to buy. So just be very careful as you consume his content. But nonetheless, he gave this a great recommendation. He compared it to like a Braun or something. And he's really good at breaking down the sort of intricacies of all this stuff. And he sold me on it. So at this point, I had all this stuff, pulled up my credit card. Here was the first sort of downside to this trip. They don't take American Express on the truck. Now, is that a big deal? No. But is it a sort of annoyance? Yes. Anyway, I pulled out a different card, but I thought that was surprising because on the website, you can use Amex no problem. So I finished checking out with all this stuff, and he says, okay, go over to this box and you get yourself a sweatshirt. I said, what? A sweatshirt? He said, yeah. When you meet a certain milestone in terms of spending. Our promotion right now is that you get a sweatshirt. They have both green and black, or black and red. Unfortunately, they didn't have my size exactly, so I went with the closest thing, and you probably saw me wearing this at the beginning of the video, but I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. It's free? And he said, well, it's not free. You had to spend some money. And I said, no, but like, it's free? And he said, yeah. So I said, amazing. So I got the sweatshirt. And I said, so like, how does it work? Like, do the promotions change? You guys have other stuff going on? And he starts talking me through it, and he says, and you know what? Right now we have another promotion going where if you buy 2 pairs of pliers, you get a free hat. I said, oh, so like if I buy 4 pairs of pliers, do I get 2 hats? He said, yeah. I said, where are the pliers? He goes, right up there. I didn't even see it. The whole time I was in the truck, I didn't even see what he was talking about until he pointed it out to me. But right next to the driver's seat in the very front of the truck was just a mountain of pliers and hats. So as you can see, I ended up buying 4 pairs of pliers. I got the super cool orange trucker hat, snapback, and then I went with the with this one. And in fact, why don't we switch over that now? So those are the 2 hats that I got. Now, the thing with the pliers, same situation as before. In the green handle, he didn't really have much of what I wanted. And this is where I sort of, as I think about it more, maybe messed up a little bit. For example, he had the slip joints that I wanted, but in red handle. He had the 9-inch Talon grips that I wanted, but in a red handle. And I said, in the moment, I just said, you know what, I'm gonna stick with the green handle, even if it's not exactly what I want, because, again, I'm trying to build up my drawer, and I want to stick with the same color. Now, in hindsight, should I have just picked up the arguably more useful tool? Probably, right? Because, you know, I'm saying to myself, well, if I had bought that Talon grip, even in red, I could have put it in a different toolbox, right? It doesn't have to live in this box. If I had picked up those slip joints, I could have put them in my Vito Pro Pack or a tool or whatever. But anyway, I obviously, as you can see, did not do that. So I bought these 2. So this is your long nose, long handle, and then this is a long nose, long handle with a bent tip. Both in the green handle. These are certainly, you know, more specialty type tools. So the degree to which I will make use of these is, I think, TBD. But I'm happy to have them in the workbox, USA made, of course. And these were the first 2 that I picked up. Then I was sort of running low. So they did have a set of diagonal cutters in the green handle, but I just picked up the flush cuts. I was like, oh, do I really need the diagonal cutters? I don't know. Now, I also bought a pair of the precision head pliers, which you didn't get to see in the unboxing because they came later, but I saw these, right? Long nose mini handle pliers, and I said, okay, you know what? These are green handle. The precision ones are obviously much thinner, and they're spring, they have a spring in them, so they return, whereas like these you have to sort of work in. These are a little tough at the moment, but we'll work them in. I said, okay, I'm gonna get these, and I said, you know what? What's the smallest slip joint that you have? And so we're looking, and he's got the big ones, he's got the little ones. Anyway, he finally finds me this in the red handle. So this is their 4-inch slip joint, and I said, okay, fine, I'm gonna take the red handle. Here's the deal. My plan is I'm gonna build a full Snap-on EDC kit. So be sure to subscribe if you wanna see that video when it comes out. And I think these are going to be an integral part of that overall kit. So after that, I completed my second transaction. I got my 2 hats, and I said, dude, I gotta get off this truck. Please don't tell my wife. And he said, oh, don't worry, everybody says the same thing. Your secret's safe with me. And I said, beautiful. I placed an order about 10 days ago. And then I told him, I'm also looking for something else. He said, I've got plenty of that on the truck. Just wait till you get here and then we'll talk about it. I said, okay, great. So the first thing was an order of 4 items. The first of which is this green tape measure. Now, as I said in the previous video, when you buy on the truck, at least my truck, right? And I'm sure every truck is a little bit different. I don't really know. When you buy on this truck, he doesn't really have the boxes for most of the stuff, right? Which, to be clear, is not necessarily a bad thing, right? And in fact, if you're a professional mechanic, right, you're on your lunch break going to the Snap-on truck, maybe you don't want to have to deal with discarding and opening and whatnot. So for me, as the quote-unquote not professional homeowner, I know some folks, they took umbrage They took umbrage with me referring to myself as a professional homeowner, sort of tongue-in-cheek, because I referred to a 3/8 ratchet as a 3/4 ratchet, and people had a lot of fun with that in the comments. But nonetheless, when you buy it ahead of time, like when you place the order and he has to actually order it, you do get the boxes. With all of this stuff, I haven't actually opened up any of it. I've been waiting for the video. So hopefully we're not disappointed. But now Snap-on makes, as best I could tell, two different sort of flavors of tape measure. They have the all silver sort of old school tape measure. And then they make this little number, which is a 16-footer, pretty much perfect for everything I'm looking to do around the house. It's got a magnet on the back, no additional features besides that. It is auto locking, which is super cool because you know I really appreciate that. My favorite tape measure today is my Milwaukee auto locking that I have on my Vito Pro Pack at all times. And what'll happen if I don't have that tape measure handy and I have to measure something, I get super annoyed that every other tape measure that I own is not auto locking. So pretty cool. Next, so I'm actually gonna open this one because we're gonna need it to open some other stuff. This is the Snap-on auto loading utility knife. Now I have a Milwaukee Fastback. Milwaukee Fastback is awesome. And I'll probably continue to use my Milwaukee Fastback in a variety of use cases. But what's really cool about this thing, because I had never seen this before, I think I saw this on a TikTok or something, is that, well, it's auto loading. So it has a button here to pull up a compartment in which you store your utility blades. This comes with 5 Snap-on branded utility blades, but I believe that they're standard size. So when you run out of these 5, you can buy any old utility blade, it'll work just fine. But these are branded, and if you want to stick with that, you could. So you load all your blades in there, you click it up like you normally would on a utility knife. But what's unique about this is when this blade is dull or this blade is broken and you're ready to move on, click this button here, pull it out, you come down, reload, bam, brand new blade. So the fidget factor here is pretty cool. I mean, I could probably just sit here all day and keep going back and forth with this. This is another made in China tool, which means it's probably a rebrand. I don't know though, does anybody else make this? I was trying to think to myself, have I seen this from another company? And I can't think of anyone who has made this before. But if you know of someone, be sure to leave it in the comments. For my money, I think this is super cool. Now, am I ever in a situation where I'm just cutting boxes so fast that I need to reload in a hurry? Not necessarily, but I think it's a really cool feature. Again, minimal markup on an item that's probably rebranded and of course is made in China, but you have the Snap-on branded blades. I don't know how well that will focus, so you may not be able to see it, but they are super cool. So that's purchase number 2. Purchase number 3. So again, this is still all of the stuff that I had placed the order for before I got on the truck. Now, our friend Doc over at Last Best Tool, who, by the way, left a comment on my last video, and I was on vacation at the time, and my wife, I told her that he had left a comment, and she said, oh my God, he's like your Elvis. And I was like, well, I don't know if that's exactly true, but it kind of is. I have watched, like I said, just about every single video on Doc's tool. What's good about it is that you will learn something when you listen to him speak. I would love to meet him because I just assume he's a wealth of information. The downside, you cannot watch a video and not find something to spend your money on. And the alacrity with which he speaks about these Snap-on ratcheting screwdrivers is unbelievable. So I said, okay, if it's good enough for Doc over at Last Best Tool, it's good enough for me. I only have a Husky ratcheting screwdriver right now. You saw that when I did the maintenance on my tankless water heater. It's got a lot of slop and play, and I don't know, it's not a Snap-on, so I don't really like it anymore. So I wanted to outfit myself with a ratcheting. This is the stubby, and if you could put 2 and 2 together, we might have another one coming here soon. So this is, of course, made in the USA, so we're back to the stuff that Snap-on actually makes. Now this one, when you buy the ratcheting screwdrivers from Snap-on, you can choose to either just buy the handle, or you can buy what they call a complete screwdriver, in which case you'll get this shank, you'll get the handle, and you'll get a bit. So you gotta kind of figure out where the detent is to get that in there. See, I just learned something. The only bit that it came with, I think, is this Phillips number 2. Did it come with? Yeah, Phillips number 2, but I have some more bits forthcoming. Obviously, it's a ratcheting screwdriver. You all are familiar with those. I mean, I can see what he means now. I have never felt a ratcheting screwdriver that feels quite like this. There's no play at all, and it's just super smooth. Wow. Super cool. Feels great in the hand. You know, most stubbies are so small. And as I was saying in the video where I got the very small Knipex plier, I mean, they're so small as to be not useful because I don't have that big of a hand, but I guess it's a little bit bigger, and it just gets lost in there. I can't really do anything meaningful. And of course, the really small stubby screwdrivers, the same thing happens. Now, I do have a Klein, which bridges that gap a little bit, but it's not ratcheting. And I think this bridges that gap entirely. Fits really nicely in the hand. You can get this in some pretty small places. And the other thing that's nice is that as you buy more of these shanks, so this is probably the 2 or 4 inch shank, you can put a much longer shank on this very small handle and it will work just the same. So our first ratcheting screwdriver from Snap-on is in fact the stubby. And then the last thing that was part of that initial order, the ratcheting screwdriver kit. Now, I say but, and of course I'm going to use our blade here to get this open. Snap-on does sell a $550 kit, which I think in that one you get stubby, regular handle, you get I think 4 shanks, and then you get a ton of bits. I hemmed and hawed and I sort of went back and forth and I was like, you know, do I want that one? Do I not? And when you do the math sort of individually, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Partially because you're paying for the case. Snap-on charges you for these cases, if you didn't know. And of course the bits are expensive. So I was like, okay, I have a lot of bits. These will come with the bits that I'm likely to use most often anyway. I really just care about the handles and the shanks. So I went with this kit. So this is what it looks like when you first open it up. This is just a little, I guess, card there, which we could kind of put away. Oh, and guess what? Okay, so this is actually super cool because this is the same exact case that you would get if you bought that $550 kit, because our stubby fits in there quite nicely. And then if you bought the actual $550 kit, right here is where your little foam tray of bits would be, and then there's room for one more shank. So this is the full size ratcheting handle. The bits that it comes with are stored in the top. A lot of people have complained about this design. They don't appreciate the fact that they're jiggling around as you're using it. I guess it'll just come down to personal preference and whether or not that's something that really matters to you. I am not overly concerned, but in total, we received, what is this? 5 bits. So we got a Phillips 2 and 3. We got 2 flatheads and a single hex, which is a T13 branded Snap-on, of course. So super cool. I realize that the bits themselves are probably a little bit hard to see, but those are the 5 bits that you get. They store back here. We will leave one of them out of the case for now. This top here has a little O-ring on it, which is pretty cool. Make sure you get a nice tight fit. And it comes with 2 shanks, so you have your extra long. Put your screw in there. Beautiful. Turns just as smooth as we did with the stubby, which is what we would expect. And like I was saying, take this shank out, put this in the stubby. Now you have something that can get pretty far, but you have maybe a little bit more control at the wrist. And of course, the only thing that I wish on some of the stuff from Snap-on is that the knurling was just a bit more aggressive, right? Like you have a shank that is, I don't know, 6, 8 inches long, and the knurling is 1 inch. So I don't know why we couldn't have had maybe 2 inches of knurling, because if you're doing like precision work and you want to use this to twist it, you could be all the way down here, but your knurling's all the way back here. So I don't love that, but what can you do? And then we also have this shank. So in total, these are the 3 shanks that we ended up with. They make, I think, 2 more in total, which is they have a hex shank, they have 1 more size, and then they have a flexible one. So I am sure that over time we will end up with all of those in our kit. So moving on now to the stuff that I picked up once I got on the truck. Now I'm going to save the biggest item for last because that yielded the biggest promo. But let's talk about promos. So Snap-on is obviously very good at what they do, right? They have built a business over 100 years. They know how to get you to buy stuff, even stuff that you may not necessarily need, just because they're going to throw in something that you can't otherwise buy, right? And you think it's cool, so you want it. Now, the first promo that we'll get out of the way is, of course, this hat. He's still running the same promo on the truck where you buy 2 pairs of pliers, you get a free hat. If you buy any hammer, you get a free hat. What can I say? I'm a sucker for pliers. I'm a sucker for hats. I like these snapbacks, right? I'm a little scared what my hair looks like. I actually prefer to wear them backwards, but the 2 pliers that I picked up for this promotion are set on needle noses in the green handle. So now I have the very small needle nose, I have the precision tips, then I have the very long ones that I bought and I unboxed in the previous video. So we'll throw those in the toolbox. Then I have our LN47 ACF in the red handle. Now, the very first unboxing video I ever did, I had bought the 7-inch version of this in the green handle. It is probably my favorite plier overall. And you know, it's really funny. I saw a video the other day where someone was saying like, you know, Snap-on, what a marketing gimmick, right? Because they're showing people picking up dimes and pennies and whatnot on the edge using these. And they're like, any needle nose plier can do that. It can, but does any other needle nose have the triple slip joint? Does any other needle nose have the bolt turning capabilities of this? Does any other needle nose have this serration pattern and whatnot? So sure, you could do that. What's interesting about this is that you can not only do the precision work, you can also do all this other stuff with it that I just haven't seen another plier be able to do. Now, I had mentioned on the previous video that when I was looking at the promo last time, I picked up 2 sets of pliers that I don't know if I really needed them just because I wanted the green handle. And I said that, you know, he had these in red and I probably should have picked them up. So this time I did pick them up. And my plan is that this is most likely going to make its way into the boat toolkit in the summer, and then in the winter maybe it'll go in the Vito Pro Pack or something else. But I'm still looking for this 9-inch in the green handle, but for the time being, pick these up, get the free hat. Why not? All right, so we only have 2 items left, and if you're asking like, how did you overspend your budget and there's only 2 items left, when I get to that last item, it will make a lot of sense. So first is this set of electronics screwdrivers. Now, interestingly, this foam, they're not held in here super tightly, and I think that's most likely a function of the fact that these are very delicate tips and I don't want to squeeze them, but these will fall out pretty easily if you let them. The promo for this, you either bought these electronic screwdrivers, they had hex, they had a couple other things, and if you did, you got a personal cigar case. Now, I do enjoy a cigar from time to time. I would not consider myself to be an avid cigar connoisseur of any kind. So, that being said, did I need a personal cigar case? No. But am I a sucker once I get on that truck for buying that which will yield me something that I couldn't otherwise probably buy? Also, yes. What I did actually really like about this, obviously, it is branded Snap-on, which is super cool. We love all things branded Snap-on, but it also comes with a cutter. And you can never have too many cigar cutters. I don't know how many times I have wanted to smoke a cigar, but the cutter was just not available. Even the cutter is branded Snap-on. Pretty cool. It feels pretty nice in the hand. Generally what you find with these types of cutters is that over time they get really sticky and then you just can't open and close them anymore. So time will tell the degree to which this will hold up for us, but I just love the fact that it stores so nicely in there. And then in our pack here, that smells good. And of course, this makes a ton of sense, but again, I've never owned one of these cigar cases, so I didn't put 2 and 2 together before I just opened this. When you buy a humidor box, the wood inside, what is this, like some sort of cedar, right? Keep the moisture away from the cigars, and that's the same exact thing that you have inside the case. So I would say that this probably holds, guess what, this is pretty big. This might hold as many as 5 or 6 cigars, depending on the sizing of them. So picked up the electronic screwdrivers, got the cigar holder for free. And of course, every time I say free, just go like this in your mind. That's okay. And then in terms of the electronic screwdriver kit that we picked up, we've got 3 millimeter, 2.5, and 2 millimeter flatheads. Oh, and 1.5 millimeter. And then we have Phillips head 1.0 and the babiest of them all, 00. So I have a kit of electronic screwdrivers. These are made in Spain, which means they're probably a Baco You know, when Snap-on bought Baco, and they still have the factory in Spain, so that's likely where these came from. Obviously, they come in the foam, and these will slot in very nicely next to my screwdriver kit that I bought last time. I'm also going to put this in the toolbox. And speaking of the toolbox, if you all would like to see a Husky toolbox tour, let me know. One of my favorite channels, Toolbox Tours, posts a video every Saturday. I love watching that guy's stuff. So if you think I should do one of my own, be sure to leave a comment. And I just remembered that I actually have two more things that I bought. So let's talk about this one first. We got our very own Snap-on pocket knife. Now, I have said that I am interested in doing a Snap-on EDC. At this point, I now have the knife, I have the plier. I know of the screwdriver that I want, but it's back ordered. I still need a flashlight. I'm not sure what I'm going to do flashlight wise at Snap-on, because you would need something that could fit, at least in my case, in a sling bag. But I picked up the knife because I want to make a video about this, and I think it'd be pretty cool to carry. Now, of course, Snap-on doesn't make any of this stuff. This is a CRKT rebrand. And as you saw in a video that I did about my travel EDC pack, I just picked up a CRKT for the first time. Funnily enough, he was selling that same exact CRKT knife on the truck as I bought at the flea market in Florida. I ended up going with the red handle because the EDC pliers that I bought, those really tiny slip joints, were also red. So I'm going to stick with that theme for an EDC. Nice opening mechanism, really appreciate it. I like the red handle. At the end of the day, I'm going for looks with the knife because I am not a bushcrafter. I'm not striking a fire steel or cutting my food with these knives. They're really just for opening boxes. So I picked this up, and stay tuned for that Snap-on EDC video. All right, so for the grand finale, first I'm going to show you the promo that I got as a result of buying this. Snap-on Bluetooth noise canceling headphones. Now I'm not actually even going to open these up at the moment because I don't even know if I'm going to keep them. I don't know if I should give these away as part of the channel. I don't know if I should sell them or if I should use them. I have AirPod Maxes, so I'm pretty well set from a Bluetooth noise canceling headphone point of view. But that was the promo for today's purchase. And what was that purchase, you're asking? Our very own triple socket set. Now, when I got on the truck, I had every single intention of purchasing a 3/8 socket set. I wanted shallow and deeps in metric. The SAE stuff, I don't really need. I already have everything in SAE in Husky brand, so I'm unlikely to ever buy a Snap-on SAE set. But I wanted it in metric, and I was thinking 3/8. Now, yesterday in the morning, I was doing research, like I said, about the 100-hour service on these machines, and pretty much everything, or at least nothing, really goes up past 15 millimeters. So then I was like, okay, well, I really like working with 1/4 inch. I got my little stubby ratchet. I picked up the long handle ratchet. And if I can get away with it, I would prefer to just kind of stick with 1/4 inch because it's just a little bit nicer to work with, in my opinion. So I get on the truck. And of course, I really just wanted the double bank, right? I want shallows and deeps. But then I saw this in the foam, and I was like, oh boy, oh boy. And of course, one thing led to another, and this came home with me. So we have everything from 4 to 15 millimeter. We've got shallow, semi-deep, and deep. In the 1/4 inch, these are all 6-point sockets. I also don't mess with the 12-point stuff. And this is the type of thing that I expect will last many lifetimes. So as expensive as it was, and to be clear, this is why we blew past our budget. I'm okay with it. I would buy it again. These are everything that everybody says that they are in terms of quality, at least at first glance. I have to put them to use to know for certain. But I don't think you can go wrong with the foam. And even the folks that have a lot of negative things to say about Snap-on pretty much universally will suggest that for the core components of your toolbox, your sockets, your ratchets, your wrenches, and then I think there's a little bit more debate as we get into screwdrivers and pliers, but for that sort of like basic stuff, you can't go wrong with Snap-on. I will be back at some point in the future when we have a little bit more money in our allowance, our Snap-on allowance fund, to buy the 3/8 set. I'm hoping I can get the same triple now just to maintain the parity in the box. But if I can only get the double, I'm truthfully fine with it. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So 1/4 inch metric, 4 to 15 millimeter. pretty excited about it. So now, how many times have I said that I only have one more item and then we're done? I feel like Steve Jobs, but I promise that this is not on purpose. I just keep forgetting that we have just one more thing. So this was not the final item. The final item was actually the Snap-on light. In the previous video, when I talked about the new headlamp that I picked up and the pen light that I picked up, I said, you know, this is probably going to service all of my lighting needs until Snap-on creates a new light that I convince myself that I need. That's exactly what happened. So this little number, packed with neodymium magnets on the back, you can attach it to just about anything. Of course, that is a ferrous metal. If you turn it on once, you get all 3 lights. And you can also control each light individually. Now, what I really liked about this was I could just throw this right on the side of my toolbox here, and I have sort of walkway lighting should I need it. The Snap-on dealer himself was asserting that, you know, if you're underneath a truck and you have like you're trying to attach a light, but you have a few gaps and whatnot, what's nice about this is that it's so flexible, right? You can just sort of stick it on and it'll sort of mold itself to the shape of whatever it is that you're trying to work on. And in terms of the price, I actually thought it was pretty good, considering that you can't get a Snap-on light for less than, say, $100 thereabouts. This is effectively 3 Snap-on lights, right? And I think the price is like 150 bucks. So USB-C chargeable. Of course, I did not get the box for this because it was on the truck, but had to have it. He only had one left. Well, the rest is history. So jumping right into the very first item, in a previous video when I made my NASCAR diecast stand, I talked a lot about PPE. Now I'm gonna do another unboxing because I picked up a lot of PPE stuff on Amazon. Some were viewer recommendations. As always, if you have recommendations, be sure to leave them in the comments because I like to buy stuff that you all recommend so I can test it out on the channel and talk about it. So these are Snap-on branded. I'm sure these are rebranded from somebody. I have a number of pairs of safety glasses from Milwaukee, from DeWalt. I have a few off-brands, and I just picked up a few more pairs in that video I'm talking about. What I really liked about these, I love the yellow lenses. To me, these are perfect for really cutting the grass. That's where I like using the yellow lenses. In the workshop, I'm fine with just clear, but for outside, I really like having this. What's nice about these is that they have a few different mechanisms of adjustment. Typical adjustment, you can go forward and backward, right? So depending on how long the distance is from the top of your ear to your nose, basically, you can either move these forward or backward. But another thing you can do, which I've never seen before, is you can actually lift these up and you can tilt them down. So depending on the method that you would find most comfortable, and I actually don't wear them at 180 degrees, I tilt them up ever so slightly. I find that for me, that and then I pull them all the way back, they fit really nicely on my head. They tilt down a little bit, which I really appreciate, and then they stay close to my face on the nose bridge here, which is also something that I'm looking for. The next thing we picked up is this new set of Milwaukee pliers. Now, for my money, Milwaukee changed the game with respect to EDC pliers with this kit. This is so new that my dealer didn't even know that these existed. So I had placed the order ahead of time. I showed up that day on the truck expecting to pick up this and a couple of other items. Unfortunately, he didn't have everything on the truck that I needed, or at least that I had ordered. So that's part of the reason I have to go back, which is of course a little bit scary because if you go back, you're probably gonna spend more money. Nonetheless, I wanted to pick these up immediately. Let's get our Snap-on knife out here to get this packaging open. So with this kit from Snap-on, you're getting 3 pliers in total. Now they actually make this same kit in the dipped handle, but I chose to go non-dip for this purchase. Now part of the reason I decided to go with the non-dip is that I actually already have a set of these mini slip joints in the dipped handle. So here you can see a sort of side-by-side comparison of these two tools. So this is their 4-inch slip joint, model number 44BCF. This is still a double slip joint, so you can go a little bit wider or you can bring it in to get a little bit more fine work, and then you get a little bit more in the hand, obviously if you're keeping it on that first position. These are made in the USA, and of course, as with all EDC pliers, we always have to ask ourselves, how useful are these really going to be given their size? Now for me, someone who's used to carrying around like a Leatherman Wave every day, and I've got the needles on there, I've also carried the mini Nipex Cobras. You could do a little, but you can't do a ton. What I like about this set is that depending on whether or not you're willing or able to carry multiples, you give yourself a lot more functionality and it doesn't take up that much more real estate. So the second tool is of course the famous, or I guess nearly famous, needle nose Talon grips. One of the first Snap-on tools I ever bought was the slightly bigger version, and of course I have the even bigger version in the red handle in the toolbox. This has become my favorite plier for the stuff that I need to do. I find that it's so versatile. It's pretty much I just grab this and I know I'll be good to go. So I love the idea of having this on my person at all times as part of an EDC kit. And then finally we get these mini flank jaw pliers. Snap-on their website says that these are ideal for grabbing 3/16 to 9/16 nuts. Again, they're very, very small, and you may find that you don't work a whole lot with stuff that is this size, and or maybe you have a different tool that's better suited for that job. But again, from an EDC point of view, right, I love the idea of carrying around some or all of these pliers for daily miniature tasks. The cost on these was just over $100 for the non-dip, and then maybe $10 or $15 more for the dipped handle. I may pick up the dipped handle as well, and I actually think that there's a whole separate video to be done on these mini slip joints, because again, I really think that they've changed a lot about the way we should think about EDC pliers when I would compare these to a Leatherman, when I would compare it to the Knipex. There's stuff like this that, again, I just don't know that you can recreate this particular functionality with any of the other tools that exist today in this form factor. The next thing we picked up had been on my wish list for a little while, and it's this mini file set. Now the dealer, he was buttering me up a little bit, explaining to me, oh well, when you look under these on a microscope, each little ridge in here comes, it's like diamond shaped. That may be true, it may not be true. All I know is I do have a use for this sort of stuff, right? You're removing burrs and you're just sanding things down. Currently, the only other file set that I have is even smaller than this. It's like a true miniature file set. And I've used that in the past. I've actually used it on a couple of videos on this channel, but I really appreciated these ones from Snap-on. So now these are made in Portugal. These are not a USA made product. I forget if he told me that these are a Baco product, or there's some company in Portugal that Snap-on bought and makes this kind of tool. In total, you get 6 files of varying shapes and patterns and whatnot. I appreciate the little carrying case that it comes in. We obviously want to protect the files when not in use, because if they are subjected to anything when not in use, it will lessen their lifespan. So you've got this one here, sort of a straight McGaffer, this one more of a square shape, this one more of a triangle shape, and then the last 3 are just varying thicknesses straight across. And on the topic of the Snap-on wish list, with this trip, once again, I placed an order ahead of time, and my expectation was I was going to go pick up this, the stuff that I had ordered, as well as just kind of look around. I don't think I'm going to be placing any more orders ahead of time. Why is that? The rationale there is, in general, I have just about every tool I could need, right? Most of what I'm buying is I'm replacing a non-Snap-on version with a Snap-on version, right? Or a non-USA made version with a made in USA version, right? That's the sort of transition that we're going through, and we're doing it together on this channel. What I have found is that when I get on the truck, right, whether it be a promo in the terms of if I buy something, I get something for free, whether it be a promo in the sense of the item is a lower price than I could otherwise buy it for on Snap-on's website. The bottom line is it generally pays to wait on those promos and then buy them, right? So it won't always be the case, right? There will be some times that, for example, I don't have a great set of extensions for my sockets right now. It may behoove me to just say, hey, can you buy me the 1/4 inch Wobble Plus, and I'll pick it up. But for most other stuff, right, anything where I'm buying it and I'm looking to replace a non-USA made version with the Snap-on version, it really just behooves you to wait. On this particular trip, he had a Traxxas promo, which was basically, there was a list of 20 names. And if you bought certain tools, you got your name on a list. And then after all 20 spots were filled out, somebody would scratch off the number to reveal a winner. And you got like this Travis Pastrana, I think it was like an RC car. There was 3 spots left when I got onto the truck. I filled out all 3 spots. So that tells you some of what we bought today. Ultimately, I didn't win. I had numbers 17, 18, and 20, and the winning number was 16. So that was unfortunate, but there was an opportunity there, right? And of course, I got the Bluetooth headphones, I got the cigar cutter, I got a few things today that were quote unquote on sale. And if I had just placed the order ahead of time, there's no guarantee. All to say, I'm going to schedule my Snap-on trips in the future around the first week of the month, basically the first Friday of every month, I can go visit him. I can pick up the latest flyer, right? So this is April's flyer. My next trip back will be May 3rd. I'll get the newest flyer, see if he has any new promos, and then I can pick up stuff as I need it. In cases where I definitely need the thing right away, I'll place an order. But in general, I find that not to be the case. Next. On my most recent Snap-on unboxing, I took a lot of flack from people in the comments talking about the tape measure that I had purchased. And, you know, why would you spend $50 on a 16-foot tape measure from Snap-on? Let me show you why. So this is a $5, $2, I don't really know, Pittsburgh 25-foot tape measure. When you try to pull this thing out, of course, it has no auto lock, which is an additional feature, so I understand that that's not necessarily something that they would have included. It's not as if it's broken. But what I have found is that, one, it's extremely hard to pull this button back. When I do pull it back, if we get out to a certain height, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show it to you because I'm a little close to the wall here, but if you get out to a certain length, do you see that? I didn't do anything. The button is all the way up. This should be feeding backwards, right? Come on. There it goes. That's why, right? And so now you're talking about what is the incremental cost of going with a Snap-on tape measure versus a Stanley Fat Max or a Milwaukee or what have you. Which, to be clear, those are great tape measures and I wouldn't take anything away from them. My current 25-footer is this. This thing's a piece of junk. I used this not too long ago. I was installing a little thing for the dog, like a little harness in the backyard. I got my big tape out, and it was just an annoyance to work with. Never mind the fact it doesn't have the button on the bottom. It's not auto-locking. The belt clip, obviously I'm sure I could just tighten this down, but a lot to be desired there, and it doesn't retract. So this is garbage, right? Again, I want the work I do to be fun, to be enjoyable. Like I don't get paid to do this, so if I'm not having fun, it's really not worth it. And of course, when I come out to the garage and I get to play with the Snap-on tools, I do have fun. Now this is auto-locking, which I greatly appreciate. The first time I ever experienced auto-locking was on a Milwaukee tape measure, which I have nothing bad to say about. But this 25-footer is auto-locking. It's got the button on the bottom as well as the top. And unlike the Harbor Freight one that I just showed you, if I go to the same length here and hold the button, it retracts exactly as you would expect. So I had the 16-footer, which I really appreciate because it has a magnet on the back. 25-footer goes back to the typical belt clip. So this will live on the wall more for framing or outdoor project. And the Harbor Freight, right in the garbage. Our next purchase is a little bit of tool organization. So Snap-on just very, very recently released their new plier racks for your toolbox. These come in 3 different lengths. I chose to get the 30-inch, which I think holds 26 pairs of pliers. They fit in there quite nicely. And if you had been watching a previous video of mine, you will have seen that I had been buying the Ernst plier racks from Amazon. Those are actually also made in the USA, which is super cool, and they're of course much cheaper than the Snap-on version. That being said, to equal the capacity, you'd have to buy 3 of them. So one of these I think is around $60 for the 30-inch, so 3 of those, I think they're $15 each, so pretty close in terms of cost. It'll mostly come down to how many pliers you have. Do you need this many racks? And again, this does come in 3 sizes, this one being the biggest, but also a function of, to me, the build quality here is a little bit better, right? We're using a metal, we're dipping this. The Ernst, primarily made of plastic. I don't know that there's a metal component at all contained therein. And what I have found with the Ernst is that it tends to move around a lot in the toolbox. So every time I'm opening or closing the drawer, the thing tends to slide back and forth. Now, some of that gets attributed to the drawer liner and the drawer itself, but some of it does get attributed to the Ernst plier rack that I'm using. This feels pretty sturdy, I would say. There's no magnets in this, which might have been cool, but obviously would have increased the price quite a bit. The dealer did tell me that people were cutting these down, right? So if you have if you want to make a shorter rack, you can cut it down or whatever. And like I said, they do come in 3 sizes, but this is also not as tall as the Ernst, which I do appreciate because, and again, maybe if you have a Snap-on box, this is not a concern or less of a concern. The Ernst is 3.75 inches tall. This is about 3 inches tall, so a lot more clearance. I find that with the Ernst, in certain portions of the box, I really brush up against the top of it. So this gives me a little bit more versatility in terms of what drawer I decide to make use of for my pliers, and I really like it. This is a made in the USA product. It just came out, so I would definitely recommend checking it out if you're looking for some plier organization, and I can't wait to get this installed in my box. So I have two more tools we're going to talk about. They are big purchases. Before we do, let's get into some of today's promos. As I was walking off the truck, he's like, hey, do you want some Snap-on cups? I said, of course I want some Snap-on cups. Of course, they come in my Snap-on green. These are the flexible cups, so these would be great for the boat, or if you drop them, they're not going to break, which is nice. I believe that they're dishwasher safe, which is super cool. I'd never seen these before. In fact, I've only ever used this type of glass or cup once in the past. I told my wife that I had new cups for us in the kitchen. She said, no, you don't. You have new cups for the garage. So they're going to stay out here. You may see them in future videos, but I thought that was neat. And then he also gave me another Snap-on hat. Today I did not have to buy 2 sets of pliers in order to get the free hat, which was nice. He just gave it to me as I was walking out the door, which I'm always very appreciative of. So the first big purchase that we made. So these are the wide mouth adjustable wrenches in the foam organizer. You may recall, again, if you watch any of my YouTube shorts, I did a sink or a drain replacement on my sink, and I did not have a wrench that would fit over the nut that goes on the bottom of the sink. In that video, I said to myself, you know, do I need the Snap-on wide mouths for this? And of course, the answer is probably no. Obviously, I may do without it, but man, if this is just not the coolest tool I've ever seen. So again, if you're watching the YouTube shorts, I did a video not too long ago where I restored this crescent wrench, and I mentioned there that it's made in Jamestown, which is only a couple hours west of here, and I actually have some family who live there. In fact, my grandfather used to work at the Crescent Tool Factory in Jamestown, so he very well may have made this. What a difference 50 years makes in terms of leveling up the tool, right? So for one, this is exceedingly heavy. I don't have a scale on hand, but I mean, I don't know. You could probably curl this 5 pounds. Then you have this, which you can hold with 2 fingers. And of course, you get a lot more bang for your buck in terms of total width of the fastener that you're gonna tighten this down with the Snap-on. Of course, it has little markings on the front, so you can see, I mean, it looks like this goes out to 2.5 inches, which is massive. And then the whole thing is 12 inches long. It has my green grip, which I really appreciate. I think Snap-on has started making these in the USA, right? This is, of course, a Baco product, so it's made in Spain. The USA ones, though, I wanna say like the 6-inch adjustable wrench is like $100, something like that. I got this whole kit for $219, right? So you got the shorter version and the bigger one in the foam, and of course, you are paying for the foam. I know a lot of people, when they hear stories about adjustable wrenches, they're the first ones to say, you know what? This is old technology, right? Doc at Last Best Tool just did a whole video about this, comparing the adjustables to the Knipbacks and the flat jaws and everything else. You're probably right? But I do think that there's something to be said for a tool like this, because its versatility is probably still somewhat unmatched. The ability to get this tight, I mean, one of the things I don't like about the Knipbacks, for example, I can't adjust it when it's on the fastener, right? So like if I'm on it and I need it to be a little bit smaller, I just can't do it. I have to take the whole thing off, make it smaller, and then I put the whole thing on. This, I just can get it wide, get it tight, and I'm ready to roll. I do appreciate that about these more, I guess, classic tools, if you will. I suppose over time, we will come to find out whether or not these thumb screws are gonna hold up. What I found with the one that I restored is that, you know, if you take a wire wheel to it and you throw some WD-40 in there, it works pretty well. Obviously, it is still a little loose, but nothing that we can't fix. So, super excited to get this in the box. As you can see, I'm, I guess, addicted to the foam. I think that there will come a time when I simply run out of room in the toolbox, and then I'll have to make a decision as to either get rid of the foam, because, I mean, we're talking about maybe 25 to 40% more space taken up because I have the foam. And of course, if I just put these wrenches on top of each other in the box, now it's greater than 50% of space I'm using just on the foam. What's nice about the foam is that if I open my toolbox one day and this is what I see, I know I have a problem. So there's a trade-off with everything. And of course, the solution is get rid of the foam or buy a bigger toolbox. The last tool on today's unboxing adventure is my very first set of Snap-on wrenches. Now let me start with a quick backstory. I own this set of Milwaukee ratcheting wrenches, and to be clear, I think that these things are fantastic. I have used these a fair bit since picking them up. I really appreciate the markings, right? I love how Milwaukee on the numbering, it's sort of colored, right? So this is black. I think the SAE probably uses red. So you can really see it at a glance. The ratcheting mechanism, definitely not as smooth as you'll hear with the Milwaukee, or excuse me, with the Snap-on. little more like a grinding gear type thing, but not something I've ever noticed when using them. I found them to be infinitely useful. I was actually just doing a job the other day on a water pump. I couldn't get a socket on the nut. I pulled out these wrenches and got it off and went about my business. So I do like these quite a bit. What I don't like about them is a couple things. One, this is an incomplete set. So we go from 8 to 10 to 12 to 13 to 14 to 15 to 17. So we're missing 9, we're missing 11, we're missing 16, and then we don't have anything past 17. I like purchasing complete sets. And then the second thing I don't like is this whole carrying case. I don't even know what you would call it. I suppose they did it because it's got this handle, you just grab the wrenches and go. But if it's in a toolbox, is that really what you're meant to use this for? And maybe the answer is yes, but for me, it'll probably end up living in a truck or something like that. So I don't like those things about it. And I decided, you know, I could just buy the Snap-on wrenches to fill in the gaps, but he had the set. I was like, you know, I don't have any Snap-on wrenches of any kind. Let's get into this. Now this plastic case is a little hard to get off. I think when it goes in the toolbox, I'll probably just leave this off, even though I do like it for keeping everything nice and clean. But this is what we ended up with. So here is a no-skip set from 10 millimeter, and just listen to that. I don't even know if you can really hear it on the microphone. Extremely, extremely fine tooth. So 10 millimeter, no skips, all the way up through 19 millimeter. So if we compare the 17 millimeter for both, I just picked one at random. The first thing you'll notice is the size differential, right? The Snap-on is much taller. And then when it comes to the head, the Milwaukee is ever so slightly thicker. I would say 10, maybe 15% thicker. Again, it's something you can go your whole life or career without really noticing. But to me, those are some of the small details and part of the reason why we appreciate Snap-on, right? They're able to get this extremely fine-tooth ratcheting mechanism in a housing that is, I don't know, 10% thinner than the competitor. And again, it's really hard to say how well that will come through on the video. I'll try to get some B-roll if I can, but it is noticeable. Now, one thing everyone does say about the Snap-on wrenches is that they are a lot thinner, which again, obviously we saw that in the head, which I think is valuable. On the shank or on the shaft itself, people have said, at least on videos, that they're just a little bit less comfortable in the hand, right? And you can sort of feel that, right? If I make a fist around both of these, this is extremely fine all the way around the edges. I don't think you'd ever get really fatigued. This, I can already start to feel as I really squeeze on it, it cuts into your hand just a little bit. So if you're wrenching all day, every day, you may notice that. For me, I don't expect it's going to really be the end of the world, and so I'm okay with it. And then finally, we talked about packaging. I mean, this is just a Snap-on blow molded case, but I think this will fit in the toolbox extremely nicely, a lot better than the Milwaukee one, because again, the Milwaukee, you have this handle. This is meant for, to like grab and go, and then you have to open it. Hope all the tools don't fall out, and then go about your business. Now, the one downside to this set is, like I said, it starts at 10 millimeter. This one started at 8. So this 8 millimeter may still come in handy for us in the future. There's probably a synergistic alliance there for us to make use of. But that's everything we picked up today from Snap-on. Again, I had the opportunity to use my birthday gift card, more of like a 50% off coupon. I will be back on the truck in 2 weeks to pick up a few more items, some of which I already ordered, so I know what they are, but I'm not gonna tell you just yet. And then I'm sure there will be a couple things that catch our eye that we have to pick up. I'm really in the market for a hard handle, 1/4 inch flex head ratchet. All I have in 1/4 inch right now is I've got the stubby flex head, which I appreciate, but if you're trying to get something going, you just have no leverage whatsoever. So right now what I'm ending up reaching for is my much longer soft grip, which is nice, but it doesn't have the flex head, and it's really long, so it's sometimes a little bit cumbersome. So I'm hoping to pick that up, as well as maybe a few more. But for now, let's get into the stuff that I bought most recently. So first things first, we're not even gonna talk about a Snap-on product, but I did get this off of the Snap-on truck. So this is actually an Easy Red, model number 4S12L. What you have here is an extra long handle, and on the one side, you've got a 1/4 inch bit holder. So this is just a Milwaukee Shockwave bit. Pop it in there. It is pretty magnetic. I mean, it does take a little bit of force to get it out of there. Of course, this is a reversible ratcheting mechanism. So we have it on, we can turn it off, which is pretty cool. And it's a flex head. So I can hold this button down on the side, and it's a locking flex head. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 positions in total. And then on the opposite end, you've got a 1/4 inch socket driver. So we can throw one of our Snap-on 1/4 inch sockets on there. Again, same idea, reversible with your 7 locking flex positions. Now, I'm not sure that this was something I particularly needed, but I saw it and I knew that because it wasn't Snap-on, it wasn't gonna be that expensive. I love that it's this extra long handle with the locking flex head. Obviously it's reversible, and I think this is a very versatile piece of kit. Next, you probably noticed we got the free hat, and for those of you who have watched our Snap-on unboxings in the past, you know that my particular dealer, if you buy 2 pliers or a single hammer, you get a free hat. At this point, I have probably a half a dozen Snap-on hats, so I certainly don't need any more hats, but what I generally do is I look at all the pliers that he has for sale, and if they have a green handle, I check them out. He's had a bunch of the same green handle stuff for a while, so I haven't picked up anything, but this week he had some new stuff, starting with these tail and grip flank jaw 6-inch pliers. Now, in a previous unboxing video, I got that 3 plier kit, which came with a set of these tail and grip flank jaws as well. This one is a double slip joint, while the longer one is a triple slip joint. With the slightly bigger ones, you're gonna be able to grab a nut between the size of 1/4 inch to 1 inch, according to Snap-on's documentation. I appreciate that it has this little arrow here so that you know how to turn it. It's got it on both sides, so if you're upside down, you can certainly see it as well. It does have this little shear cutter here. When I tried it, I don't actually have any good wire to test it with. I'll probably have to get some of that for maybe a future video. And then on the smaller one, you're looking at a 3/16 to 9/16 nut to turn. So I appreciate having them in multiple sizes. And of course, like I said in the last video, this is probably more of like an EDC type item for me, whereas this will sit in the toolbox. This was one of only 2 pliers on the whole truck that he had in the green handle. This had been on my wish list for quite a while, so I went ahead and picked it up. Those other pliers are these. So these are the HDW C8s. Now, I think that these are relatively new, right? So they look a lot like the Knipex bolt cutters, which he also has on the truck, but I've never actually picked them up. I was thinking about buying them from Amazon, but I don't know, I just never really did. And then when I saw these, especially in the green handle, I said, you know what? Let's pick them up. I don't have a pair of bolt cutters, so why not? Obviously, these aren't very big, and Snap-on says that for a piano wire, you can do about 3.8 millimeters, and then for a soft wire, you can get up to about 6 millimeters with these. I haven't tested them too thoroughly as of yet, but they feel pretty good right out of the box. One thing that was interesting, I made a YouTube short lamenting the fact that my previous set of Baco pliers had a completely different green on them. And as you would expect, most of the comments were you shouldn't worry about the handle color. I would disagree, right? I mean, I think if you're gonna pay 50, 60 bucks for a set of pliers and you're gonna get green, you want it to be universal across your entire toolbox. You're free to disagree with that, but that's how I feel. So these are the precision tip needle nose, and I don't know how well it'll come up on this video, but these have a very different green, almost more of like a lime green, whereas this actually looks like what you would expect with the Snap-on green, right? So on my left or your right are the Made in USA greens, and then these are the Made in USA or Made in Spain greens on the bolt cutters. But then here's the Made in Spain on the precision tip needle nose. So a little bit of variation. Maybe they figured it out, and this was just a bad batch. Who could really be sure? I still love these things. I don't know if I ever did this in a video, but these are the P9 2055As. I know that these are considered like a specialty plier, but for me, like from a homeowner DIY perspective, I think when you're talking about like pliers that you should have in your toolbox, I'm definitely gonna have these in there because they're true needle noses, and you can get in and out of obviously very tight spaces. They do give you this little plastic cover to keep on there, but pretty much anything will work just to protect the tips. The next thing that I picked up was another shank for my ratcheting screwdriver. Now, I think my favorite purchase so far out of the entire Snap-on stuff that I've bought is my ratcheting screwdriver set. So I have both this handle and the stubby. The stubby's inside right now because I was using it previously. But they make, I think, 5 or 6 different shanks, right? They've got the extra long, they've got the regular length, they've got this, which is 1/4 inch for your sockets. They have a flexible one, which I actually just placed the order for, so that'll be in a future unboxing. And I just decided that, you know what? given the fact that I have the Snap-on 1/4 inch sockets, I really just need to go all out and make sure that I can leverage those sockets in a variety of ways. And in fact, I actually used this just before I did a video in my Kawasaki Mule to get the battery in and out. That bolt is way down in there. You could theoretically do it with like a stubby ratchet, but my hand is big obviously, and once you get your hand all the way in there, it's hard to see what you're doing. So with something like this, you could be a little bit more precise, get it straight up and down. You can still see, you can still shine a light down, and I just found it to be a little bit more useful. So picked up this shank. I think Docket Last Best Tool has suggested that there are gear wrench shanks that you could also use here if you want to save a few bucks. Nothing wrong with that. But for me, I wanted to finish out my kit. So after I get the flexible shaft, I will have all of the different shanks that Snap-on makes for these ratcheting screwdrivers, and I'm extremely happy. Again, from a homeowner point of view, DIYer point of view, I find that I'm using these things all the time, probably more than just the regular screwdrivers, and I actually think that if I could only have one screwdriver, it's probably going to be this. We'll do a quick interlude and talk about the other free stuff that we got today. So this is the Snap-on Pocket flathead screwdriver. It's also got a little magnet on the end, which I have found to be kind of nice, and it's actually relatively strong. I think that's pretty good. So he had a box of these and he said he had to go ahead and take a couple. So I grabbed some. I'll probably throw this in a truck or something and just have it if I need it. And then I have this Snap-on sticker pack. We did start to price out a Snap-on toolbox, at which point you probably don't need the sticker pack as much. I love this Husky toolbox, mostly because I appreciate that this top cranks upward and downward. Of course, if I had a Snap-on box, it's a fixed height and there's really not much you can do about it. But what I'm also noticing is that this box is filling up very quickly. The drawers are not as deep as I need them, both in terms of height and length, and I'm running out of space. So I don't know that I will necessarily buy a Snap-on toolbox. I don't know that I will necessarily, if I do buy one brand new. Obviously on Facebook Marketplace, you can always find stuff. The problem is most of what you see on Facebook Marketplace is in the 55-inch variety. This is a 72-inch box, and I think if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it big, and I'm going to get an 84-inch Epic, because why not? So let me know in the comments what you think I should do with respect to a new toolbox. Should I buy a Snap-on off the truck, 84-inch Epic? Should I buy something else? I would love to hear all of your thoughts and opinions. Next up, so he had this on the truck previously, but he did not have it in the green handle. And this is one of those things where the green really doesn't matter because it's so minimal. But I said, you know what, I don't need it right this second. At the time, I mean, summer was barely here. Of course, now we're getting outside a lot more, so I'm happy that I have it. But this is the Snap-on Fireman's nozzle. Now, it obviously won't come through in the video, but I really can't overstate how good this feels in the hand, both ergonomically, but also just, you could tell the build quality is there. Now this is a made in China product, but it is a lifetime warranty, which is super cool. It has two different mechanisms for you to turn it on and off. So you can either click it forward for on, click it backward for off, and of course you can adjust the nozzle here as well. This is an all aluminum construction inside. It's got your filter here to make sure your water is nice and clean, and then you're gonna go ahead and get your hose on there in the back. This is the most substantial water nozzle that I have ever felt in my entire life. And the thing with water nozzles is, of course, you can go to Home Depot, you can buy one for, I think you could probably buy a Fireman's one for 20 bucks. This is much more than $20, but this is a lifetime warranty product, which I find super compelling. I think water hose nozzles, you run over them with the car, they break, what have you. If you did something like this, and it did break, which honestly I have a hard time believing there's anything you could do to this that would break it, but I'm sure it's possible. I'm gonna bring it onto the truck and he's gonna give me a brand new one. Now Snap-on does sell a couple other water nozzles. You don't have to get this big bulky thing if you don't want it. And of course you don't have to get a Snap-on one at all, but I do have it in the green, which is pretty cool. And like I said, easily the best build quality in a water nozzle that I've ever seen. Now it wouldn't be a Snap-on unboxing video without me talking about lighting. Somebody left a comment in a previous video and said, as a longtime Snap-on shopper, I don't think you're ready for the number of new lights that Snap-on comes out with. That person could not be more correct. Every time I walk onto the truck, it seems like there's a new light, and I don't know what it is, but they're all so compelling because they all fit different use cases. So on a previous video, I had picked up this light. This is the very flexible, incredibly strong magnets on the back of it, rechargeable. and then you can control each light individually, or you can just have them all on at once. This is fantastic, right? It sticks on the side of the toolbox. I've used it a handful of times. But then today, I see this other light that he's got on a toolbox, and I'm like, what is that thing? And then I went to grab it, and I thought it was mechanically attached to the toolbox. I could not believe how strong the magnets were. So that would be this little number. So this is Snap-on's ECF DG108. It is 1000 lumens at the high, and then when you turn it on, and if you hold this down, you can dim it, right? So now we're getting much higher, and it's gonna get lower. And then I don't know why that is, but like when we go from high to low and then I let go, it just goes to high, like it doesn't stay at the lower, but then you can eventually get it to dim to where you want it to on the second try. This has their rechargeable batteries, right? So now the previous version of this light was rechargeable, but the batteries were not removable. With this one, you could take these out, and these are their USB-C chargeable lithium batteries. You're seeing a lot of companies do this now. I mean, Ryobi has a battery that looks almost exactly like this. And then I guess what's good about this is that Snap-on makes a 4-bay charger for these batteries. So if you had a bunch of them and these died, instead of having to charge the whole light and wait, you can simply put these on the charger, take 2 new ones off, and then you're back to work, which of course is pretty cool. In terms of the magnets, I don't think that I can do it justice, but let me just tell you, these are exceedingly strong magnets. Now I bought this with a very specific purpose in mind. So on my Milwaukee pack-out wall, I love these, they call them the belt clip holders, but I said to myself, you know what, this is actually the perfect size for this light, such that I could throw it on this wall behind me. And generally, my workshop is not set up in this way, right? I move the toolbox to film these videos, but normally the toolbox is shifted 90 degrees, and then I have an open area in which to work with my tools on this side, and then I've got another workbench over here. And so having a light on that wall is pretty useful. So if we clip this on there, I'm thinking to myself, you know, this is just gonna sit on the wall like this. I don't know if this is helping, but obviously these magnets are not going anywhere. And this rotates with 120 degrees of rotation. So this is obviously flat, but you can rotate it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Obviously 4 times in my use case against the wall isn't really gonna help, but likely it'll sit something like this for most of its life. Now I do use these pack-out holders for their intended purpose, which I assume is tape measures. And again, I have found them to be infinitely useful. So in this case, I'm holding 3 tape measures. We've got our Snap-on 25 footer, which I talked about in the last video. This is just a 16-foot Milwaukee. I don't actually really like it. It's not auto locking. It doesn't really have any interesting features, but I have it on here because my auto locking Milwaukee is on my Vito Pro Pack, which is one of the first YouTube videos I ever did. So if you haven't checked that out, you might want to. And then this one is actually really interesting. I never did a video on this, but this is the Fast Cap. So it's got a built-in pencil sharpener. It's got this little area here for you to write on. It's got the button both at the bottom and up here. Now it's not auto locking, but the other thing that's cool about it, besides this white tape, which is really easy to read, is that it goes all the way by 1/8 of an inch. So you've got 1/8, quarter, 3/8, etc. instead of most tape measures, which are just quarter, half, etc. And then it also does metric. So you've got some millimeters on there as well. Anyway, in terms of this light, 1000 lumens, rechargeable, 120 degrees of rotation, and the world's strongest magnets. I think it'll go great on the wall back there. Obviously, you know, see, you can't even pull it off. You're just gonna have to slide it off. And of course, if I wanted to move it around, I could. And then the last thing we picked up today, also the most expensive thing, is our Snap-on pry bar set. Now, the catalyst for this is that I have started to frequent pawn shops looking for Snap-on tools. And while our friend Doc at Last Best Tool has suggested that in Montana, there are pawn shops that are just stocked floor to ceiling with Snap-on tools, my experience has been almost the opposite. Sometimes I do walk into a pawn shop and they have some Snap-on tools. Generally, I find them to be priced about retail. I mean, obviously you're getting them for a little bit less, and maybe you could haggle, but I also haven't found anything that I actually wanted. Like last time I went, they had a 3-piece ratchet set in the foam, black handle. I think they wanted $350 for it. I think it retails for a little over $400. So certainly a bit of a deal. I mean, they were in very, very good shape, but I have 2 of those 3 ratchets already, and I didn't want the black handle anyway. That being said, on a recent pawn shop visit, I picked up this Matco pry bar. So this is a striking pry bar, goes all the way through the handle. It's blue. Obviously it's a little worse for the wear, which is what you would expect. I mean, these are tools that you're literally meant to just beat on. But the guy wanted 20, I think I got it for 15. So I thought that that was a screaming deal for this pry bar. And then when I got it home, I realized that, so I picked this up, say, a month ago. I have used this almost every day that I'm in the garage. I find a use case for this tool, which was surprising to me because prior to owning this, I didn't really have an actual pry bar. Most of my prying tasks were going to get done with a flathead screwdriver, which of course you're not supposed to do, but you quickly realize that that flathead screwdriver is going to reach its potential in terms of use pretty quickly, whereas this may never reach that. So I like this, but I realize that given how much I'm finding myself using stuff like this, the Snap-on set wasn't far behind. Now, sadly, this did not come in the foam. I think that Snap-on does sell a striking pry bar set in foam, but I think it has red handle. I think it has another pry bar, like the price is way more than this one was, but that's okay. These blow molded cases are nice. I mean, they serve the same purpose, right? The whole point of this is when we open our toolbox and we look at this, we say, okay, something's wrong, something's missing. Whether it's in foam or plastic, doesn't really change any of that. So this pry bar set is 4 pieces. You've got your 8, 12, 18, and 24. These handles are the first thing that you'll notice as being much more substantial than the Matco. So if we try to do a side-by-side comparison, hopefully you can see that this is a lot more substantial. Plus you've got this nice butt on the end to prevent your hand from moving upwards, whereas the Matco actually tapers at the end, which I think is the opposite of what you want. I have not yet hit myself in the hand, but I think eventually you always will. And I think the Snap-on is gonna help ensure that you do that the least, at least when I compare it to the Matco. They come with these little rubber caps on the end, which is nice. Of course, they're all pre-oiled from the factory, which is what you would expect. Although, the biggest one, this 24-inch one, does not have that little rubber bit on the end, which is surprising. Do with that information what you will. I think most often I will find myself down here, right? I think this 8-inch is really nice for getting into some tight areas. And then I think as you move up, you're probably getting into more of the striking use cases. But you can find an infinite number of use cases for a pry bar. Admittedly, I have not used the mini pry bar that I have in my EDC kit that much. I've used it for a handful of tasks. But again, I can't really overstate the use that this has gotten in the short amount of time that I've had it. So I was happy to complete my set. Of course, we had to get it in the green handle. And while I was on the truck, one of the things that I placed the order for was the carbide scraper set in the green handle, so that will be on a future unboxing. First things first, why don't we talk about a specialty tool that I picked up. So I'm getting ready to do a full service on my pontoon boat, which has a Mercury outboard motor. Now, I have never done this service in the past, but my marina wanted to charge me $500 to change the oil. I said, no thank you, I would rather spend that money at Snap-on and then do it myself. So I placed an order at mercruiserparts.com. I guess they're based in Florida. They were great to work with. I'll have a link to them below. I haven't used the stuff yet, but my interactions with customer service, making sure I was finding the right parts for the job, everything went great. So anyway, as I was watching some videos on how to do this service, right, and we're talking oil change, spark plugs, fuel filter, the basics. The video I was watching, I could tell that the guy was using all Snap-on tools because now it's just like something I'm focused on. And anyway, he was using this Snap-on screwdriver. So Snap-on officially calls this thing the marine plug screwdriver. So it's purpose built for this process. It's got a 1/2-inch flat tip blade on the end of it, vapor blasted, and the whole thing, I guess, is built out of just a 1/2-inch of alloy that they sort of wind down. It's got the hex here, so you can get some extra torque if you need it. Obviously an oversized instant gripped handle, and we got it in the green. Now typically I wouldn't buy like a specialty tool like this for something that I'm basically going to use this once a year. But ultimately I thought the price was pretty reasonable on this, and no sooner did I text my dealer than did I get recommended a video on YouTube from Doc at Last Best Tool reviewing this exact screwdriver. So ultimately I feel like I made the right decision. Next on our list of pickups is this pick set. Now when it comes to picks, there's a lot of different sizes, handles, tips, etc. that you can get. For years, what I have been using are these Harbor Freight picks. So these are, I mean, Snap-on calls these ones mini picks, If these are mini, then these are extra mini. Let's get our Snap-on tape measure out to measure. So the ones I had been using are about 5 inches long, and the Snap-ons are about 6 inches long. We'll get our Snap-on CRKT knife out to unbox these officially. Now, here's what I was thinking. One, when you look at Snap-on's product line from a pricing point of view, obviously there's some things that are just exceedingly expensive. I actually didn't think that these picks were all that costly, given the fact that, of course, these are lifetime warranties. You're going to break picks, and the thing with Harbor Freight is once you break these, you can't just go get the one pick that you broke. They're gonna want you to bring the whole set, and it's like a whole thing. Further, the pick set from Harbor Freight does not include this little number. So this has got this little point on the end of it right there. I don't know how well it'll come through in the video, but I think that that is a super interesting use case, because you can come in at this angle, but then you could just sort of ever so slightly maneuver that little bit at the end with your hand, which I find to be really compelling. They feel pretty good in the hand. Obviously they are the mini pick set, but I can at least get a good purchase on this handle, as opposed to this, which you can't. I mean, there's not really much to hold on to, but these were probably $1, and these were, I think, 30 bucks. Over time, I expect to pick up a few more pick sets. I would like the longer ones, and I don't know if I'll ever get into like the extra long set that Snap-on has, but certainly I would like this one and then the next size up. This is still a made in USA product. They're actually manufactured in Elkmont, Alabama. I've never been, but if you have, let me know how it is. And I think that these will get a lot of use throughout the shop. The one that I actually use the most from this Harbor Freight is just the straight pick job. I actually used this most recently to punch some holes in leather. So I would make my mark with this and then come back through with the leather punch. Of course, Snap-on has that one here. But then, like I said, so Snap-on has that one with the little curve at the end, but then they also have this hook, which I don't currently have in any brand of pick set. And then they've got your straight 90, and the Harbor Freight one is basically just 3 different versions of the 90. So this is more of like a 90, that's more of like a 75, and maybe that's like a 105, something to that effect. So I'm sure I'll still keep these around. I think that they will find use somewhere, but moving forward, this will be my primary pick set. Next, why don't we talk about magnetic tool storage. So these are Snap-on magnetic trays. They're gonna go on the side of your tool bench. These are overpriced. I'll just be very honest with you. I think you can spend $60 on the truck a lot better than this, but I saw them, I thought that they were interesting, so I picked them up and I wanted to share them with you all. They do have 3 magnets on the back. According to Snap-on's website, they can hold about 10 pounds. Truthfully, I don't ever think that I will come close to breaching that value. I'm mostly gonna use these for consumables or maybe some stuff during an in-flight project. But by and large, I don't think you're ever gonna get to that capacity, and that probably has a lot to do with the price, because this is just ABS plastic and then it's got some magnets at the end. Ultimately, you could 3D print something like this for pennies on the dollar if you really wanted to. So this may actually be my first Snap-on regret purchase, but hey, you win some, you lose some. Next, why don't we talk about something we definitely do not regret, and that is this 3-piece ratchet set in the green Profi foam. Now the first thing you're asking yourself is, well, Peter, where are the 3 ratchets? I only see 1. Well, I actually already owned the other 2 ratchets that came with this. So I texted the dealer and I said, hey, I just want the regular length flex head and the foam. I don't want the extra long handle, because I already have it. And I don't want the stubby, because I already have that. He said, that's not a problem. So ultimately, while on the website this costs, I think, over $400, we only spent a little over $150 yesterday to get this ratchet and the foam. Now, one thing I'm a little surprised by is that it's actually quite hard to get stuff out of this foam. If time were of the essence, I'm not sure that this is the best solution. I don't actually think that that's the reason you're buying this, however. I think it's more so that, again, when you open your toolbox and this is what you see, you know, hey, who borrowed my 1/4-inch ratchets? I'm going back and forth on whether or not I care about the color of the foam. Of course, my 1/4-inch socket set is in red, while this is in green. But of course, once we get everything in here, it looks pretty darn cool, if I don't say so myself. Now, this was actually a similar set that I saw at a pawn shop not too long ago. In that case, they had the black handles, and I think they wanted about $350 for it, which, again, I wasn't going to buy it because I knew I already had 2 of the 3 ratchets, so I was going to wait to pick this up from the dealer. Now, I'll be perfectly honest, I actually wanted a 1/4 inch hard handle regular length flex head, but I just can't find those anywhere. I mean, they're not seemingly on the website anymore. This 3/8 hard handle in this beautiful blue is not even available on the website anymore. So I think one of 3 things are probably happening. 1, they're having production issues with the hard handle. I think that that's probably the least likely. 2, they're gonna sort of move away from the dark handle. I think they're just gonna, now that they feel like they've perfected the soft grip in terms of it doesn't pick up grease and all that stuff, maybe they're just not gonna manufacture the hard handles anymore. Or 3, they don't wanna sell you a dual 80 hard handle because they only wanna sell you the 100 tooth when they ramp up production. Now, he had some of those 100 tooth ratchets on the truck. I have no plans anytime soon of picking one up. When you watch Doc at Last Best Tool, his video about the 100 tooth, it leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm perfectly happy with my dual 80 setup. I'm very happy to have this in the foam. And now at this point, from a 1/4 inch point of view, I have that easy red long handle that I showed in the last video. I've got all 3 of these ratchets. All I really have left to pick up is the torque wrench, at which point I'll be able to make pretty consistent use of all the 1/4 inch sockets that I have from Snap-on. As I said in the video when I picked up this set, as a homeowner, 4 to 15 millimeter is gonna solve 90+% of the tasks that I get into. In some cases, like in the case of the lawnmower with the blades, there's a 15/16 nut on there. I have that stuff available. I don't necessarily need a Snap-on set, although I may just pick up a 15/16 chrome and impact just for that purpose. But all in all, I'm really happy with this ratcheting foam set. I think it's gonna look great in the toolbox and keep everything nice and organized. Next, why don't we talk pliers, because it would not be a Snap-on unboxing without talking some pliers. So yesterday I picked up 2 new pairs of pliers. First things first is your classic 47 ACF. So this is the triple slip joint, and of course it's in the red handle. Now, he didn't have the green on the truck, and I know I could have ordered it and whatnot, but the truth of the matter is, what I found interesting about this one is that this is actually the 100th anniversary edition of this tool. Now, does that add to the value? Does it? No, but I thought it was pretty cool. Now, I already have the 44 ACF, which is the sort of EDC version of the slip joint. Of course, this one is only a double, but in a form factor like this, there's not much more that you're gonna really be able to do. So I had been yearning for like a proper slip joint from Snap-on for some time. I was willing to deal with the red handle because it was the 100th anniversary edition. And ultimately, I'm very happy that I picked this up. Another plier pickup that we decided to make was this wire stripper slash crimper slash cutter tool from Snap-on. Now, this will strip wire from 12 to 20 gauge, and ultimately it feels exceedingly good in the hand. Now, what I've used to strip wires in the past is this antique looking thing. So this is called the Strip Master, and it was made in Sycamore, Illinois, many years ago at this point. It has some of these initials on here, KJS. I don't know a KJS, so I'm not sure who this belonged to at one point, but of course it belongs to me now. This thing's nice. It goes from 14 up to 20, so with the Snap-on, we gained the 12 gauge wire. This thing, of course, is a bit more wieldy, whereas this, its profile is far greater. Now, of course, you're paying for that greater profile because it gives you the automatic wire stripping. So when I'm at the workbench, I'm probably still gonna use something like this. But if I'm working on a trailer or if I'm working on a car and I need to strip some wires, I'm probably gonna end up using something like this. I think you'll be able to get in and out a little bit more easily. And then prior to picking up this, I also have a couple of these laying around. So this is just your prototypical wire stripper, right? This is sort of your all-in-one wire stripper. This even says bolt cutter on it. This thing was actually made in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Company is the Thomas and Betts. So another antique here. I have a few of these that are relatively newer. This one actually goes from 10 all the way up to 20. If I squint, I see somebody's initials, but I can't quite make them out. We're getting a lot of play in the handle here. And again, in terms of bang for your buck, in terms of sizing, I mean, it's really not even close. Again, if you're working on a trailer, if you're working on a car, I think you're gonna wanna go with something like this as opposed to this, just given how unwieldy it is. But there's some stuff that this can do that this just can't. So you always have to have the right tool for the job. And as always, we would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Rounding out our plier pickups of the day, this is actually the thing I'm probably most excited about from yesterday's haul. These are the Snap-on locking pliers. I think that these came out pretty recently. These are made in the USA, which is super, super cool. And I just don't have something in this form factor that I really appreciate. The closest thing that I have to this is this set of locking pliers from Harbor Freight, Pittsburgh brand. And you know, it's funny, maybe I should do like a total video on this so I can get you guys really up close with like some macro shots. But the build quality between this and this, it's just not even up for debate, right? And it's funny because on the comments, half of the people will say that the stuff from Harbor Freight works just as good, which in some cases very well may be true. Do I think it's true here? This has up to 4,000 pounds of grabbing ability. I don't think that this comes anywhere close, so I'm gonna tell you right now that that's probably not true. You could just tell by looking at the spring that there's no way that this thing is gonna do the same thing that this thing can do. Now, do you pay for that privilege? Of course. And as a DIYer, will you need what Snap-on offers? Maybe not. But here's the other thing. The build quality is also not comparable between the two. If we did an up close, one, these jaws are off center. So again, I don't know how well it'll come through in this video. Maybe I should do a follow-up video, but these jaws are not centered. These jaws are centered. Another thing I noticed when I'm looking at this, right? So I've got this rivet here connecting this part of the handle with this jaw. There is no gap at all right here. When you look at the same one on Harbor Freight, there's plenty of gap. So that's where your dust and dirt and grime are gonna fall into, and eventually these things just aren't gonna work as well. What are some other differences? Well, this has the oversized knob on the end. Makes turning it a little bit easier. This one, pretty small. Now, that in and of itself, maybe not the end of the world, but here's where the Snap-on one really shines. This will take a 3/16 hex key to allow you a little bit more leverage when tightening or loosening this nut. Now in the comments, I get it from both sides. On the one hand, I'm told, you can buy everything at Harbor Freight and it'll do the same exact thing that Snap-on can do, okay? And then I get folks saying, you cannot compare Harbor Freight to Snap-on because this costs 50 cents or whatever it costs, and this costs whatever it costs, 50 bucks, say. You can't have it both ways. Either Snap-on makes a made in USA, high quality product with unparalleled performance, and it comes at a cost, or they make junk that's overpriced, has none of the interesting stuff that we just talked about, at which point we can compare it to this. So you really just have to decide what game are you willing to play when you're comparing one tool to another. My intent is not to bash Harbor Freight. In fact, I just picked up my first wrench set from Icon that I'm gonna do a whole separate video on, and I'm super excited about it. But is there any world in which I believe that the Icon product, or any Harbor Freight product for that matter, can hold a candle to the Snap-on product from a hand tools point of view? No, I just don't think that they can. So anyway, Icon versus Snap-on notwithstanding, these locking pliers I think are gonna be super cool. Again, the only thing I have close in this form factor is this one from Pittsburgh. I just went through all the reasons why I don't really like this thing. It's not necessarily gonna go in the garbage. I think we may throw it on the boat or just something so that we have it if we were to need it. But when I need something in this form factor, I'm gonna reach for this every single time. Only two more items on the unboxing. First things first is the MagMat. Now this is your 8x11. This is the biggest one they make, and they make 3 sizes in total. The magnets are as strong as you would expect Snap-on magnets to be. So if you want to put your pliers on here like I had in the thumbnail, you could certainly do that. They aren't going to go anywhere on you. Now I think if you're an automotive technician and you have a lift, this is great. You can put something like this on the lift. You have easy access to your tools while you're doing a job. Great. In my case, I don't work off of a lift, so who knows the use cases I will find for this. A couple things that come to mind already. Side of the toolbox for your hammers. I don't have a great place for them in my toolbox at the moment. Another interesting use case is that it can go in your toolbox to keep stuff from rolling around. And I'm sure over time we will think of more and more use cases. But the challenge for everyone in the comments today is let me know, what do you use these mats for? Because I am very, very interested. And that brings us to the very last tool in our unboxing journey, which is of course the Torch 300. Now Snap-on makes this Torch 300 in 3 different varieties. They have a 300, a 400, and they recently came out with a 100. He actually had all 3 of them on the truck, and I decided to go with the 300 as my first purchase. Now I have many different ways of dealing with heat shrink. I've got this heat gun from Milwaukee. I mainly use this to get stickers off or just heat up something that's cold. If you have like a frozen door handle or something, this would work great. But theoretically you could use this for heat shrink. And then inside of my Vito Pro Pack OC140, which I did a whole video on this whole kit, and I think you should definitely check it out. But in here I actually have the first Snap-on tool that I ever purchased. So this is their butane powered soldering iron / heat gun / hot wire or hot rope cutter / plastic welder. So this thing is beautiful. It has a magnet on the back, so if you want to put it on the side of your workbench you could. I don't use it that often, so I don't need to do something like that. Now what's been frustrating about this is that when you let it sit for a while, the thing just doesn't want to turn on. You really have to sit there and you have to play with it. And then eventually you can get it to turn on. This doesn't throw out a direct flame, same as the heat gun, whereas this, your butane torch, is gonna throw direct flame. And this thing is just way more versatile. Ultimately, and I'm thinking about doing a whole video on this, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat when it comes to dealing with heat shrink, soldering wires, etc. One other tool that I have for this purpose that isn't shown here is just something you plug into the wall, and it's basically your Milwaukee heat gun, but it's plugged into the wall. The reason I wanted this little number is both for heat shrink, but also I've always wanted a butane system that has this profile because I think it has a lot of different use cases. The first thing my wife said when she saw it is like, oh, can we make creme brulee and do the thing on the top? I said, absolutely we can. So that may in fact be the first use case for something like this. Other use cases would include starting fires and of course dealing with heat shrink and whatever else. This is actually a made in Ireland product, believe it or not. So do with that information what you will. Ultimately, I thought that this was reasonably priced for what it is. It's got the knob on the side so you could turn it up and turn it down. I haven't actually filled it with butane just yet because what I'm learning from this one is that you probably want to leave these things pretty close to empty, fill it when you need it, and then empty them once again. But I was happy with this pickup. We finally have it in green. I know somebody in the past recommended I get the Torch 400, but I felt like for dealing with heat shrink, the Torch 400 was probably too much. I think that's definitely more for starting fires and whatnot. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think I should have gone with the 400 or the 100? And who knows, maybe we'll add them to our arsenal at some point in the future. So let's talk about the stuff that I was immediately interested in. Then we'll get into the stuff that came a little bit later. And then we'll talk about the incredible deal that I was able to make. So first things first, let's talk about the ratcheting screwdriver. I have mentioned this Snap-on tool, and also, do you hear that squeaking in this chair? A lot of you have recommended that I get a new shop stool, and if you subscribe and hit the notification bell, I think you'll be pretty surprised in the next couple days because this thing is going in the garbage. Anyway, this Snap-on ratcheting screwdriver is my favorite. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I have nearly the full kit already. So I've got the regular length handle, the stubby, and I've got, I think, all of the shanks that they make. I don't have the bit set. So I know somebody's gonna leave a comment talking about how, you know, why would you spend $500 on a screwdriver? The bit set has a lot to do with the price when you look at it on the website. Without the bit set, it's quite a bit cheaper. But nonetheless, given how often I use these, I was more than happy to have a backup and something I could throw in a tool bag. So he had this handle, which retails for $77. This is the 5-inch shank, which retails for about $26 on their website. The bit that it came with is not a Snap-on bit, so nothing to report there. And then he also had the 1/4-inch shank, which is another thing that I've used quite a bit. If you're lacking an extension or you just want a better way to get to something, throwing this on your ratcheting handle works pretty well. Now, of course, these are used tools, so some of them show more signs of wear than others, but the ratcheting mechanism on this sounds pretty good. We could flip it in both directions. Definitely not new out of the box, but a lot to like. Now there's no bits in the end, so we officially got 0 Snap-on bits out of this, but that's okay. The handle is in incredible shape, and I think that this is one of those things that, you know, as I continue to build a relationship with my dealer, if this were to break, I would feel comfortable bringing this on the truck and say, hey, can you help me out here? So these are the first 3 things we picked up. And remember, retail, $77, $26, and $25. So we're already about $125 in terms of retail pricing. I'm gonna tell you what I paid for all of this at the end of the video. Next, we've got this swivel head 1/4-inch ratchet. Now, of course, it's in orange, which of all the Snap-on colors is probably the one that I like the least. But again, when you told me the price, I was like, you know what? I don't care what color this thing is. It's coming home with me. Now, I actually want the swivel head, but with the 1/4-inch, so you could throw your drill bits in it and stuff, but still haven't got around to that. So this is the circular locking mechanism here on the back. Of course, it swivels in, I guess, 360 degrees worth of rotation, which is pretty sweet. I didn't necessarily need this. I'm pretty well set on 1/4-inch ratchets, but if I can add something to my collection that I don't already have, and I can do so at a price that I deem reasonable, I'm always happy to do it. And again, for those of you who have been watching the channel for a while, you know that I have this triple bank 1/4-inch Snap-on set. So anytime I can pick up another implement with which to make use of my 1/4-inch sockets with, I'm gonna do it. So this was pickup number 2, and on Snap-on's website, this retails for $157. Now, the last thing that I had planned to purchase was this file set. So these are the Green Instinct handle files. in beautiful shape. He said he never really used these, and guess what? That's true. The thing with files, you know, buying them used, it's sort of a crapshoot, because if people really use them, you're not going to get that much life out of them before it's time to replace them. Now, my assumption is that because Snap-on sells this handle independently, you could swap out the file if you wanted to, and I think that the handles themselves retail for about $26. But this whole kit, so you get 4 files, right? You get the triple square, the rounded, and the 2 mil files in this I guess nylon pouch, is $233.50 on Snap-on's website. Now, when I went on the website, I couldn't even find this in the green handle. The only thing I saw was red or orange, and the fact that he had it in green and was barely used is pretty awesome. You may remember that on a previous video, I picked up this mini file set. Now, these ones are not quite the instant grip handles, but you do get a bit more variety in terms of total files that are available to you. And I always said that, you know, I wanted these originally because I felt like for what I'm interested in doing, that's probably a bit more my speed, but I was always interested in picking up something like this as well. These are still made in Portugal, as is the mini ones, and like I said, retails for $233.50 on the website. Now, at this point, he had a bunch of other stuff on the table that he was looking to move. And, you know, he and I are going back and forth, talking about cars, we're talking about tools, we're talking about other stuff. And he said, you know, is there anything else that you want? And I said, you know, not for nothing, I would. There's actually a few more things that I would take home, but he didn't accept Venmo, and I only had so much cash on me. So I said, you know, well, he said, well, what do you want? I said, I don't know. I mean, this orange screwdriver looks pretty cool. I don't have anything this big in a flathead, and I love the hard handle. You know, pretty much everything that I have is the instant grip soft handle. But man, these hard handles feel so nice in your hand. And I just think, of course, they come clean a lot better, even though Snap-on has certainly made strides in this area. And he said, you know what? Take it. So I did. He threw this in effectively for free, which is going to be a pretty common theme here moving forward. Now, I don't know that Snap-on still makes this exact version. This is the SDD8, and on their website they have like an SDD8A0 or something like that. Nonetheless, this is about a $40 screwdriver. This one's in really good shape. There's a little bit of rusting at the top here, but the vapor blasted tip is more or less still in pretty good shape. From the business end perspective, everything looks as it should. I don't think he ever misused this as a pry bar on the back of the handle. It doesn't look like anybody was ever beating on it, so that's pretty cool. Now, the closest thing that I have to this today is my 5/16, again, instant gripped handle. And this was actually something that I purchased in the very first Snap-on unboxing video that I ever did after I got off the truck. I bought the whole screwdriver set. This thing, obviously, you know, I don't know, it's so tough. This actually does feel better in the hand. It's just a bit more ergonomic. But there's something about how substantial the hard handle feels that, I don't know, it's just pretty cool. So I've seen videos in which people have like a set of the hard handles and a set of the soft grips. I don't know that I'll ever necessarily do that, but overall, I was thrilled that he was willing to throw this in for free. Now, at this point, I just felt like, you know what, you got to shoot your shot. And I said, well, what about this speeder? And he said, do you want it? And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, okay, it's yours. So this is a speeder 1/4 inch flex head ratchet. Now, these things are super expensive. This thing retails for $182 on the Snap-on website. Truthfully speaking, right, of all the tools that I have, this is probably going to get used the least because it's really more of a specialty item. But that being said, I could see a case in which you would want something like this, right? You know, you flip up that flex head there, you kind of give it one of these, and who knows? So it's something I'm really happy to have in my collection. Again, going back to this idea that if you're going to have all those 1/4 inch sockets, you may as well have as many implements as possible to make use of them. And this just adds to the allure of that. Now, at this point, I think, and again, I didn't really break him down. I just said, hey, if you take Venmo, I'm happy to pay you for this stuff. And he said, nope, I only take cash, but it's yours. So at this point, he only had a couple things left on the bench, and he said, take them. Great. So this is the pair of Snap-on lineman's pliers. Now, these ones, I definitely don't think that they make anymore. I was doing some searching around. I can't find this exact model number on their website. On eBay, these things are selling from anywhere from like $70 to $150. So I don't know if this is a collector's item or what, but he said, if you want it, it's yours. So it's got your prototypical lineman tips at the top, it's got the cutter back here, and then it's got the serrations in the middle here, and truthfully, I don't know what those are for. Is that for crimping, or I don't know. So I'm hoping somebody could tell me what the use case is for this. Of course, I don't get into a lot of linemen's or electrical type work, but every now and then you got to replace an outlet or something, so it could come in handy. I have a similar set from Knipex that lives in my Vito Pro Pack, which I did a video on if you want to check it out. And of course, now I'm happy to have these in the toolbox in the garage. Finally, he had the Snap-on hacksaw. I didn't even know that Snap-on made a hacksaw. He said, oh yeah, they sure do. And listen, my experience with hacksaws is something like this, right? Probably something that I got from my grandfather. Doesn't really feel all that substantial, but this is what a hacksaw has always been in my mind. But when you compare the two of these, right, in terms of how substantial this one feels versus this one. I also really appreciate this handle as compared to this. You can see I'm sort of falling over on this one, whereas this one sort of envelops me a little bit more. I do wish that it had the grooves the way that this one does. I don't know, that just feels a little bit better in the hand. But again, in terms of it feeling substantial, I would say it meets the bar. I also like that it's got this little part on the end here, so if you need some extra gription as you're cutting, you can grab on, whereas with my old school system, not really a lot to grab onto. So, and who knows, maybe you're not supposed to put your hand there, but I would assume that the reason they give you this little notch and this little rubber area is for exactly that. So this came with the Snap-on 12-inch blade. It looks a little bit worse for the wear, something that we may want to consider replacing, but for now, I think it'll work just fine. And the coolest thing about this saw is that the tensioner is hidden within the handle. Can you find it? So it's actually right here. This thing rotates to make it tighter or less tight if you want to change out the blade. That's super cool. Typically, what I'm used to seeing is a wing nut, something like this, which is kind of a pain, right? If you slip or anything like that, if you make contact with this, it's gonna hurt a little bit. And who knows, maybe they have come out with all these sorts of advancements and all these other hacksaws, but like I said, my whole life, I've only ever used stuff like this when I need to cut metal. So I didn't know that this much goodness was available on the open market. So that's everything we picked up. I want you to pause this video, think about how much you would have expected all of this stuff to cost, and leave it in a comment down below. Now, before I reveal what I paid, the retail price on all of these tools, so if you were to buy all of this stuff from the Snap-on website, and again, like for the linemen's, I don't know what the exact price is, I just assume $70, but maybe it's a little more, maybe it's a little less. The retail price, $864.50.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
I paid $300.
Show me the money.
Now again, was this guy feeling super generous? He's looking to get rid of some stuff because the roll cart's coming in a day or two and he just has to move it? Sure. Did I lowball him? No. I said, hey, what's the price on this? He said $300, and guess what? Even if all I got was the file set and the screwdriver with the shanks and this ratchet, $300 is still a great deal. This kit alone is $233. So the fact that he threw in all this extra stuff was just icing on the cake, but I was happy with where I was at. So first things first, one of the things I bought and that I was most excited to get on the truck to take home is this 1/4 inch Wobble Plus extension kit. Now, longtime viewers of the channel will know that I have stepped up my 1/4 inch game considerably. At this point, I have probably 6 or 7 1/4 inch ratchets, and I have the triple bank Snap-on 1/4 inch socket set in metric. So the last thing that I really needed to pick up to complete my collection was a nice set of extensions. When I previously bought that Husky 300-piece mechanic set years ago now, and I don't know that I ever really told that story on this channel, but ultimately I was trying to change the cabin air filter in my truck, and at the time I had probably a 5-piece socket set. I no longer have it, but I had very little tools and I was extremely naive. I had no idea what I would need to replace the cabin air filter. Lo and behold, I needed some metric socket that I didn't have. So I went down to O'Reilly Auto Parts. I bought a set of, I don't know, metric sockets, came home, finished the job, and then I said to myself, you know what? I never want to embark upon a job and then find out midway through I don't have all the tools necessary to complete the job. So then I went off and I bought a 300-piece Husky mechanic set, and I said, okay, now I have everything that I need. It was only several years later, I guess, to basically present day, where I decided, you know what? I'm gonna replace all that Husky stuff with Snap-on stuff, which is of course the videos that you've come to know and love on the channel. Speaking of which, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our new content. Anyway, Husky did not actually give me any 1/4 inch extensions that I can remember. I know I got like a short 1/2 inch, got a short 1/2 or 3/8, sorry, but I didn't have any 1/4 inch. So then it got me thinking, okay, do I want just straight wobbles? Do I want just straight extensions? Or do I want to go with the Wobble Plus? Now the Wobble Plus, for the uninitiated, if we grab one of our 1/4 inch sockets here, basically allows you to throw a socket on, and by default you get 16 degrees of rotation, right? So you get this little bit of wobble here. But if you decide, hey, I don't really need the wobble for my particular use case, you can click it down once more, and now you've just got a regular old extension. Now, the feedback on these seems to go back and forth. On the one hand, most of what I read suggests if you're a weekend warrior, which I definitely am, just get the wobble pluses. You don't need a set of wobbles and a set of regular extensions. Some folks have complained about the wobble pluses because when you're in this wobble portion, maybe you're going up against a bolt and then it just kind of pushes back even if you don't want it to, and now you can't really access the thing you were hoping to access. So I would say the feedback is sort of mixed, but generally speaking, I find that people appreciate these. All that being said, we got 6 extensions in total. I'm really excited to have the Wobble Plus. I think for me, it'll fit the bill perfectly. Now, I don't need a set of straight wobbles and then a straight of just regular extensions. I can just have this and move on with my day. Next is another thing that I had purchased or ordered before I got on the truck because the last time I was there, it was back ordered. And that is this 3-pack of carbide scrapers with the green handle. Now, when I first saw these on the truck, he had them in the red handle, and I was like, you know what? I don't know exactly what my use case is for these, but I actually thought they were relatively inexpensive. And I said, hey, do you have these in the green handle? He said, of course we do. So I said, okay, I'll take them. Now they make a few different versions of carbide scrapers, right? They have the one with like the much beefier handle and the much shorter shaft. That's not what this is. I know Doc over at Last Best Tool did a video on some of the carbide scrapers in the past and sort of lamented the fact that this was not straight all the way across. It almost bowed a little bit, which is not what you want. I guess if I'm being a stickler, I can sort of see what he's saying, right? If I have this pressed on the precise top of this, I get a little bit, or ever so slightly, we're talking maybe a thousandth of an inch of space there. But now I'm wondering if I get the same effect. Okay, see on the bigger scraper, I don't see that anymore. So what about if we try the smallest one that they give us? This one looks pretty straight as well. So I'm not sure if it's, you know, again, just a quality assurance issue, if it's something with this size specifically, but overall, I would say that these are in reasonably good condition. I do wonder why they only give you the plastic cover for the biggest of the 3. That seems a little weird. And of course, I wish the set came in the foam. It really annoys me that they only make the foam for certain sets. I wish they made it for basically everything because I think it would be awesome. And I think part of their sales strategy is like, you know, they want you to buy stuff like this and then they're gonna come out with a foam set that is this plus maybe 1 or 2 other things, and who knows if you really need them, but now you're gonna trade in and trade up, and you know, that's the game that they're playing with your wallet. Nonetheless, I'm super curious to hear what you all use these Snap-on carbide scrapers for. I have a few use cases in mind, and of course, as you saw with my lawnmower video, I was doing a lot of scraping, so I think stuff like that, it could come in interesting. Obviously, you're not gonna bang on this. They do have scrapers with the metal plate here at the end, so if you're gonna beat on it with a hammer, you could do that, but that is not what these are for. And ultimately, I'm just happy to have it in the collection. Now, at this point on the truck, there really wasn't too much else that I thought I really needed. So I just kind of killed some time, and I don't know, I ended up buying a few more things. So first, let me get back to the thing that I purchased but didn't end up coming home with. That was a 15/16 half-inch chrome socket. Now, I've been talking a lot about half-inch on the channel recently. On my lawnmower, it requires an SAE half-inch socket. On the boat for the propeller, it requires like I think a 1 1/16. The 15/16 is for that lawnmower bolt that holds on your propeller blades. And while I have all of that stuff, I only have it in 12 point, and obviously I don't have any of it in Snap-on. Further, I don't actually have a half-inch ratchet that I'm really proud of. So I told him, you know what, keep the 15/16. I want a full set of SAE half-inch sockets. So I'm gonna pick that up on a future trip. But for today, I decided to come home with a ratchet. Now, for this one, he had a few different options on the truck, and I was debating, you know, do I just go straight chrome? Do I go hard handle? Do I go soft grip? Do I go flex head, not flex head? You know, I mean, when it comes to ratchets, I mean, there are just limitless possibilities. What I decided for my use case is that I definitely did not want a flex head. For the use cases that I have today, I have easy access to the bolts that I'm looking to take off. Further, I didn't want something massive, right? I mean, they make huge half-inch ratchets if you need a ton of torque, and certainly in a lot of applications, that's what would be most useful to you. In my case, this is actually just a step up from the half-inch stubby. So once I decided on this size and no flex head, I had to decide on the grip. Ultimately, I went with the hard handle. It's so interesting because like this is a 3/8 hard handle, and I just don't know that this handle size is proportional relative to the drive size. So I find that to be a little bit interesting. And what I mean is like, This is 3/8 and this is 1/4 inch, but these handles are basically the same exact size. So I found that to be a little weird, but when I felt this hard handle in the grip shin that I got with it and the ergonomics of it in my hand, I felt pretty comfortable. And of course, what people like about the hard handles is that they're easy to clean and all that stuff. So I was pretty happy to pick this up. This is their 80 tooth. He did have a few of the 100 tooth ratchets on the truck, but as I've said in previous videos and people leave comments all the time, the 100 tooth just isn't ready for prime time. So we're gonna hold off on that for now. And while I will pick up that SAE socket set at some point in the future, this is what I came home with for today. Now at this point I was ready to get off the truck. I was like, hey, this is gonna be a relatively inexpensive Snap-on adventure. But then I opened his pre-owned tools bin and I said, that's a mighty interesting extension set you have there. Specifically what I stumbled upon was this 5-piece 3/8 extension set. Now, of course, it came in the foam, and to be clear, that is a big part of the reason why I bought it. He has had extension sets in that pre-owned bin before, but never in the foam. Now this, again, contrary to the 1/4 inch Wobble Pluses that we picked up, these are not Wobble Pluses. These are just your regular old extensions. Again, from a 3/8 point of view, I don't have anything like this. Now, you saw what just happened there when I put this on, right? The weight of this extension is pulling down the flex head. It's sort of funny because you could basically, I don't know, carry it just like this in your truck or something, and you always just have this ready to go should you need it. But I've been finding that this flex head really bothers me lately. So much so that I'm thinking to myself, you know, even though I don't use a ton of 3/8, now that I'm really committed to the 1/4 inch stuff, maybe I want a locking flex head, maybe I just want a regular old ratchet. Because when you need the flex, don't get me wrong, it's great. But if you don't need it and all you have is this, man, I just find it to be a giant pain in the you-know-what. But anyway, with respect to the extensions themselves, we got a 3-inch, a 6-inch, an 8-inch, we got a universal, and then we have a 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter. To be clear, I don't think this was the best deal in the world. I think he charged me 130 bucks for this. It is a deal, right? It's just not a screaming deal. On Facebook Marketplace, probably could have got this for under $100, something like that. So take it for what it's worth, but I'm always happy to add more Snap-on stuff, especially if it's in the foam, and in this case, something that I don't already own. Finally, I'm checking out, he's got my credit card, and then I say, hey, what is that over there? And he said, oh, this is our new set of magnets and mirrors. I said, well, I definitely don't need this, but I want it. Now, I wasn't even able to find this on the Snap-on website. And I guess that could mean one of two things. Either A, this is discontinued and it's old news and you guys are gonna tell me in the comments, hey, there's nothing new or interesting about this, or it's a brand new product that just, I don't know, isn't on the website yet. But with this, you get 2 magnets. Supposedly this is a 5-pounder, this is a 2-pounder. And what I really liked about it is the fact that it has the instant gripped handle. Now, I think that this is new because they only have them in the green handle. He couldn't even have ordered me the green handle, but for something like this, I didn't really particularly care. So this thing extends out to, looks like about 28 inches. And like I said, this is supposedly capable of picking up about 5 pounds worth of stuff. I don't think it's gonna pick up all of our sockets, but it can pick up at least this one socket. And then the smaller of the two, the 10-pounder, has a handle that you're more likely to see on a much smaller of the instinct screwdrivers. For example, I've got here my T15, right? Oops. And it's the same handle design. This one, the 2-pounder, looks like it extends to about the same width, a little bit shorter, about 26.5 inches. So you're giving up a little bit, but of course you can't pick up something quite as heavy with this. And now here's something that someone on the comments is gonna be able to answer for me. This portion, right, at the end here, you can pull it back. Why is that? Is that to replace this magnet, right? Is this like sort of a locking mechanism so I can swap out the magnet if it, I don't know, breaks or loses its grabbing capabilities in the future? Anyway, the third and final piece of this set is the mirror, again, with the instant gripped handle. You know what's funny is that on April Fool's, Snap-on posted on their Instagram page that they were coming out with a toothbrush in the instant gripped handle. And they meant it as a joke, but everybody in the comments was like, oh no, if you came out with an instant grip toothbrush, I would buy it. And I think that's probably true. They could throw this thing on just about anything, and somebody, me, might buy it. Anyway, this is our mirror. I realize that it's just close to the camera now, which really isn't doing me any favors, but so yeah, you have a little inspection mirror here. This thing extends all the way out to about 30.5 inches. I thought this was a pretty neat piece of kit. The mirror itself will twist basically in 360 degrees of rotation for you. And of course, the mirror itself will actually also go, you know, what is that? From basically negative 90 to 90 degrees, so that's pretty cool. You can get into a lot of pretty tight places if you're looking to do some inspection type stuff, and now that it's on this instant gripped handle, it'll be more comfortable than ever before. So anyway, folks, that's all we bought for today. This is the middle of June. Now I'm thinking that my next trip to the truck to pick up those SAE sockets, and I have, I think, one other thing in mind that I want to get immediately. I'll probably do that later this month or early in July. I'll wait for the next flyer to come out. He also had the Flank Drive Plus full set of metric wrenches, and I said to him, you know, do you have like the master set? And anyway, we started talking about that. Hopefully it's gonna go on sale at some point this year. And if and when it does, I am picking it up. Today, let's talk about these wrenches. So when you buy the full set from Snap-on, these are the Flank Drive Pluses. And what that means is that they've got these teeth here on the end of the open end portion of the wrench. These teeth grab into stuck fasteners and give you a lot more purchase, and you have a much better chance of getting the bolt off than you would otherwise. Now there are numerous videos on YouTube of folks making use of these, stripping fasteners just as sort of a torture test, getting off rusted bolts, etc. And you know, some companies have started to make the wrenches like this, and they have this little indentation here at the bottom. And intuitively it would make some sense that, like, okay, if the fastener can fit down here at the bottom, I can get a greater purchase on it. There's actually no evidence to support that. And the way that it was best explained to me is, imagine if this and this were no longer on the wrench. All you had to turn the bolt was that little indentation down there. Well, nothing would happen because you're turning against nothing. So you don't need that. It's really just a marketing gimmick more than anything. And the Flank Drive Plus is, I think, just about universally considered to be the best wrench. Now, I always knew that when I bought this wrench set, I would want it in the Flank Drive Plus, and truthfully, I'm not even sure that they sell anything else, because I have these wrenches that I unboxed on a previous video. Now, the technicians among us are probably laughing at me because I still have the plastic on here, but I'm gonna try and take as good as care of this stuff as I can. So these are the metric ratcheting wrenches. Now, these are not reversible, so you actually have to flip them around if you want to make use of that. And of course, they do not have the serrations in the open end. But that's okay, because you don't always want the serrations, right? If you have a chrome fastener or something that you're definitely trying not to mar, you want to use something like this. If it's rusted on there and you're really struggling to get it off, you want to go with the Flank Drive Plus, because you don't care if you mar that thing. All you want to do is get it off of there. So now I feel like I have the best of both worlds. If I have a delicate fastener that I don't want to mar, I can use the open end on here to take that thing off. If the ratcheting end makes sense, I can do that. If I have something that's really stuck and I need to apply a lot of torque, and I don't care if it gets marred or otherwise ruined because it's probably rusted on there anyway, I'm gonna reach for the Flank Drive Plus. And if I have a ratchet and I'm trying to tighten something down that I want to hold the other end with, I have the box end of this wrench. So at this point, we really have all of our bases covered. Now, I've been getting a lot of comments about investing in SAE tools because that stuff's not going anywhere. You're probably right. So like I said, this is a metric set of the ratcheting, and this goes from 10 millimeter all the way up to 19. The master set, of course, goes from 7 all the way up to 24 in metric, and from 1/4 inch all the way up to 1 inch and 5/16 in SAE. And boy, this is a big old wrench. The set, of course, wouldn't be complete if I didn't also have an SAE set of ratcheting. So I picked up that as well. Now I'm gonna do a full video on this set because it's not what you're thinking. That's right, folks. I made my first foray into Icon. What happened was I was in a pawn shop, as I often am, looking for Snap-on tools, and I stumbled upon this set. Now, you can see the price here is listed as $75. I did not actually pay $75. If you want to know what I paid, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so when this video comes out, you'll be the first to know. So I'm going to set this aside for now, but these are SAE flex head ratcheting wrenches. They don't have anything on the open end that would mar a surface, so again, you're all set from that point of view. Back to the main attraction. Now, when you buy these sets, they can come in all different colors of foam, which is sort of atypical. Sometimes the foam, it's only in red and whatnot. And I do have a little bit of green foam in the toolbox, but I think not as much as I have red foam. So when he had this in the green, I was pretty happy. Truthfully, when I was thinking to myself, what color would I want when I do buy this off the truck, I didn't really care. The truth is, from a top down, all you see is black and chrome anyway. You just get a little bit of gold accents. And while you see the majority of this green all around the sides, that's really not visible from within the toolbox. Within the toolbox itself, this does fit, but it takes up just about the entire width of my wrench drawer. So all these ratcheting beauties are gonna have to live elsewhere. Now I'm just happy that I have clearance top to bottom because I was a little worried about stuff like this sticking out at the top and not letting me close the drawer. Now that wasn't gonna be an immediate reason to upgrade to a new toolbox, of course, but it was gonna be a reason nonetheless. Now I'm gonna do a whole separate video on getting these things nice and clean because the truth is, as good a shape as they're in, and I think they're in pretty good shape for being a secondhand item, you know, they could use a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of polishing. I just want them to look the way that they would have looked coming off the truck. And of course, if you do get this set and you're bored or maybe you're frustrated, you can actually make some pretty cool music with this wrench set. I don't know. Something to pass the time, I suppose. So ultimately, this is gonna be a pretty short video because really, what is there to say about these wrenches? They're made in the USA, they're Flank Drive Plus, they come in a beautiful foam setting, they fit in pretty much any toolbox, I would assume. My drawer here is maybe 3 inches tall and I don't know, maybe 20, 21 inches wide, something like that. If somebody needs the actual measurements, just let me know and I'll leave a comment to that effect. But ultimately, this is actually a really good use case of the foam. You know, sometimes when you buy the foam, as a percentage of the overall space that the thing takes up, the foam can represent 20, 30, 40%, right? Whereas with this, there's not a lot of wasted space, right? I mean, you're talking maybe a 1/2 inch on either side and then maybe a little bit more so at the corners. The biggest bit of wasted space is here along the center, but it's really not that bad. Which is all to say, if you were to go on Toolbox Widget, right, and buy a bunch of stuff to get these wrenches into your toolbox to fit the way that they do here, you're gonna end up taking about just as much space as you would otherwise. And the added benefit of the foam, of course, is that if you walk into your garage or you open your toolbox and you see that there's that missing spot, they're usually gonna say, hey, who took my 1/1/8 wrench? Well, it ain't gonna be me. All in all, I'm super happy I was able to purchase this set. You know, the first set of wrenches that I ever bought was Pittsburgh, and then I bought Cobalt, and then I took a pretty giant leap from there to Snap-on, but I never have to buy another wrench again. I'm most interested in, or what I was most interested in, was this 5-piece fillet cutlery set. Now, I'm not a professional fisherman by any means, but I do like to fish from time to time, and if and when we're able to catch something that's cookable, you gotta have the right stuff on hand to be able to prepare those fish. And when I saw this set of the Snap-on fillet knives in the instant gripped handle, I had to have it. So why don't we open this up first, and then I'll tell you all the stuff that I had to buy in order to get it. As always, we're gonna use our Snap-on CRKT knife to get these boxes open. Now, astute viewers of the channel will note that this promo has long since expired, right? I'm posting this video in September. The truth is, I've had this stuff for a little while. I've just been so busy that I haven't had an opportunity to come out to the garage and film these videos and talk to you all. So, that's neither really here nor there. I'm sure it'll pick up as we get into the fall, now that summer's coming to an end. Although, it is football season. Go Bills. But let's check out these knives. So, as with all things Snap-on, I am just such a fan of the casing that everything comes in. There we go. All right, so first things first, we've got our cutting board. It is, I don't know, a little thin, I would say, but this is not all that dissimilar from like the Cutco cutting boards that I think my wife has in the kitchen. So, and of course it is branded Snap-on here at the top. That's pretty cool. We've got our sharpener. That's pretty nifty. Again, instant gripped handle. And then we've got an assortment of different blades and whatnot. So you got that one. This is like, I think, your actual fillet knife. They've got a little protector here on the end to protect the edge. Hopefully I'm not gonna cut myself as I'm looking at this. And then you've got the Big Daddy fillet knife. So I'm not sure what the exact sizing is on this, but I'm pretty excited about this kit. All in all, I didn't really feel like I had to spend too much money in order to get this. And like I said, I wasn't ready to buy anything really, but this to me was a promo worth hopping on the truck for. So this kit's great. Cutting board, sharpener, all your different knives. It can come on the boat. I don't really do a lot of camping, but I suppose if I did, it could come that with us. And of course, it's in this beautiful case, which what more can you ask for? So then the question turns to, what did I have to buy to come home with that? Well, my Snap-on dealer told me I had to spend $300, and I had something in mind that I didn't need to buy immediately, but I said, if I have to spend $300, this is what I'm gonna get. I went with 1/2-inch drive Snap-on sockets. Now why did I decide to do this? In a previous video, what you may have seen if you checked it out, is I bought this Snap-on 1/2-inch ratchet, and I bought 2 sockets, specifically just 2. I bought a 15/16 and an 1/1/16. Now the 15/16 is for the lawnmower. If you watch my video of me doing the full service on that at the beginning of the year, you know that to change the blades, there's 3 15/16 bolts on there. And originally I said to myself, I don't use a ton of 1/2-inch stuff. I'm just gonna buy the 15/16. But then on the boat for the outboard, the propeller, that's an 1/1/16 nut. Now, currently all I had an 1/1/16 was a 12-point socket. And as I've said many times in the channel, I don't like using 12-point sockets on 6-point fasteners because maybe I'm not very skilled, but I find that they round themselves out far more easily than I would really prefer. So I was only gonna buy those 2 sockets, but as you know, a single 1/2-inch socket is gonna run you like, I don't know, 30 bucks. And so then I said to myself, well, instead of just spending, I don't know, 60 bucks on 2 sockets, why don't I just buy this kit, and then I'll have every socket in case I run into more sizes over time, and I get the fillet knives. Now that may be boy math or whatever, but I don't know, it made sense to me at the time. So that's what I did. I picked this up, and of course, my preference is generally to only really pick up kits in the foam, but they didn't have this in the foam. And I think, you know, in the foam, what you could have gotten is like shallow, deep, and maybe even semi-deeps, which is what I have for my 1/4 inch. But in this case, I don't need the deeps. I don't need the semi-deeps. The shallows will work perfectly fine. And now I have my, what is it, the 15/16. This will come with me for dealing with those lawnmower blades, and then the 1/1/16 for the propeller nut. Now I did also buy a 15/16 impact socket. Again, for the same reason, I use the, generally I'm using the impact to get the bolts off of the lawnmower. I think I torque them down to 90 foot-pounds or something like that. And I don't know, for the life of me, I can't get them off with a regular old socket. Again, I probably just have weak arms, but what are you gonna do? So this is why I went on the truck, to buy this socket set so I can come up with this fillet knife kit. But as usual, I came home with a couple more things. Specifically, a whole bunch of pliers. So first things first, I got these hose clamp pliers. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't even know that Snap-on made these or what they were until Doc over at Last Best Tool did a video comparing all sorts of different hose clamp pliers. Now, what he says on his video, and it turns out to be true, is that they're a little awkward to work with until you kind of figure it out. But basically, once you release them, now you're here, you click this up, and now they have ratcheting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 positions in total. So you can basically set it up to your desired width before you go down into some deep crevice, right? So if you get it there, now you can stick it down, come in, pull it out. I've never had a hose clamp plier in the past. Whenever I've needed to take off hose clamps, I just use a regular old pair of slip joints with a Talon grip on them. But this, of course, is really the right tool for the job. And as I've said with every Doc over at Last Best Tool video, whenever I watch something of his, I usually end up spending some money. So I came home with these hose clamp pliers. The next set of pliers that I came home with was this long handle duckbill pliers. Now, my only experience with duckbill pliers up to this point is this set that I got from my grandfather. The brand is K-R-A-E-U-T-E-R. They have his initials on here, but I'm not sure of that brand. So if anybody has some insights to share, please do. And I know that, you know, when I've worked on like different electrical outlets and stuff with him, he prefers the duckbill pliers as opposed to, like, I guess a typical linesman. I don't know if that's his personal preference or just like how people do things, but nonetheless, that's what I typically do now as well, because I don't know any better. I just do what he tells me to do. But anyway, in terms of the duckbill, I generally am a fan of the longer handle. I think it gives you a little bit more precision because you can really see what you're doing. Your hand doesn't get in the way as much. So I don't know. Again, this was another thing I didn't even know that Snap-on made, but he had them on the truck, and anytime I go on the truck, I'm always looking for the green handle pliers. So if he has them, chances are they're coming home with me. Next, we had to complete our collection of the flank jaw pliers. Now, I already have this same plier in, I think this is the 6-inch variety, and I've got this one, which is the 4-inch variety. Now, of course, at the end of these, they're going to work just like your typical slip joint. They've got their talon grip on the end, which on Snap-on's website says it gives you about 57% more pulling force than, I guess, a non-talon grip. But of course, the real beauty of these is that you can slip a hex head nut in there and twist it off. Now, each different size is suitable for different sized hex heads. So this big one, for example, is going to go from 5/16, and then if you get it all the way out here, that's a 1-inch hex head. Next size down is going to get you 1/4 inch at here, and again, all the way out to 1 inch. And then for this little baby pair, you're looking at 3/16 all the way to 9/16. Now, I originally bought these as more of like an EDC type item. I've never actually used them in the garage, but my plan is to start carrying them as part of my man purse at some point in the future, which I haven't done an update on the man purse in about a year. I did pick up a brand new Snap-on flashlight that could be an EDC item in the future, so perhaps there's a new video coming there too. All that being said, at this point, we've got these flank jaws in basically every size that they make. I think they may make one that's even bigger. I don't know that I'll ever buy that one, but I'm happy with these because now we've rounded out the set, and of course, we got the green handle. Now, one of the first pair of pliers that I ever bought before I even got onto a Snap-on truck, this is when I was still shopping on the website, is these precision needle nose pliers. Now, technically speaking, this is like a specialty tool, but I really enjoy using these, and I've used them for all sorts of different things. Now, you can actually buy a kit which comes with these pliers and a couple others, which he just so happened to have on the truck. So this is the case that it comes in. The model number is PLP300A, but of course each set of pliers has its own model number herein. And he had all 3 of the pliers in here, but I said I only want these 2 because I already own the precision needle nose. So what you're gonna get here is we've got our snip nose or snipe nose pliers. So you're gonna get a lot of the same, I guess, functionality that you would here, but I think they're just a little tighter at the top than these ones. Of course, they're a little bit shorter, so it's maybe a 6 of one, half dozen of the other type situation, but certainly if you need the length that this offers, you're gonna be better suited here, and then you're likely to get a little bit more control side to side with this if you're pulling or twisting or anything like that. Generally speaking, I prefer using a smaller plier. It just feels a little bit better in the hands, and I just like the fact that I can get in and out of there. Now, would I have bought these by themselves because I already have these, if not for the kit? Maybe not, but they had the kit, so I had to buy them. And then comes these mini diagonal cutters. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, this is sort of crazy because these give the flush cut pliers a true run for their money. So let me show you what I mean. I've got a zip tie here. Unfortunately, it's kind of a short zip tie, so I'm not gonna be able to do a lot of these demos, but here's this zip tie. Now these are diagonal cutters. They're not even flush cutters. But if you get this right there, it doesn't make any noise, it just kind of falls down. I can't tell you how flush that truly is. Now, if I compare that to these, which are the true Snap-on flush cuts, you're gonna notice a couple things. One, this piece is gonna go flying. You're gonna hear the sound as it's cutting, but it's not going to be as flush as what those diagonal cutters just managed to do. See that? Now, that's still very flush, but, well, guess what? In that test, they were about even. But when I was doing this before, I felt like the diagonal cutters were beating the flush cuts just by a slim margin. And again, I don't know what it is about the way they're cutting. There's no sound here, there's sound there, but both really, really impressive. So, does anybody else have these mini diagonal cutters? Again, the model number here is P87150A. If you do, what has your experience been? Docket Last Best Tool, have you tried these? I think you're gonna wanna check them out. But anyway, those are the 3 pliers in the precision kit. You know, am I ever gonna have this precision kit on my belt? And probably not, but I like the fact that I have all 3. As usual, with all the pliers from Spain, the color of the green does not match. And of course, I've been complaining about this for some time. You could tell this is more of like a lime green, and I would say this is more of like a neon green. So I wish the colors matched perfectly, but I guess the redeeming quality is that all the Spain things are at least consistent in the fact that they're different from the US counterparts. All right, and then the last thing we took off the truck was an oil filler. Now, when I was watching some videos on performing my outboard service on my Mercury engine, the main video that I found was being filmed by a man who presumably is like an actual marine mechanic, and he's the one that turned me on to that Snap-on really wide flathead screwdriver. But he also had this oil filter because, it is threaded so as to fit the oil fill cap on the Mercury engines. Now, technically speaking, this is built specifically for GM and Ford vehicle engines, but apparently it threads into the Mercury all the same. Now, I have not yet had a chance to test this on the outboard. I won't do that until basically the spring when I change the oil again. On my truck, I am going to be doing my own oil changes here moving forward, so I will get a chance to test this out. And if you're asking why I wasn't doing the oil changes before, basically when I bought the truck, they gave me 6 free oil changes. So if someone else is going to do it for free, I'm happy to do it. But I have my last free oil change in October, so I'm going to start doing it myself. But anyway, this was relatively cheap. I don't know, some sort of ABS plastic, I would assume. But I just love the fact that it's threaded. It's got this O-ring, so you're not going to spill. And I just think it'll make filling up the oil that much easier. My favorite Snap-on tool comes from this kit right here. So this is the Snap-on ratcheting screwdriver. Now what's nice about these is that interchangeable shanks mean not only can you just replace the handle or the shank if one were to break, but you can also turn these into a lot of different things depending on what your use case is. So I like this handle, I've got the short handle, and then they have a number of different shanks. So I think this is the 5-inch one. They've got this one here for your sockets. They also have a flexible one, which we may have later in the video. But nonetheless, this is my favorite thing that Snap-on makes. The screwdriver is the quintessential tool, and if you're only gonna have one tool, that's probably what it's gonna be. It's also one of those things where, you know, if you're a homeowner and you don't wanna be like me and just go completely off the deep end, if you're only gonna buy one thing from Snap-on, I would recommend that it's this. And if you're gonna buy 2 things, I would recommend this and a set of their Talon Grip 6-inch pliers. And I think those 2 things will get you out of many situations. All that being said, this kit, when you buy it, has this little compartment here. That little compartment is for a red blow molded case that is filled with something like 33 Snap-on bits. And in every video that I've ever made in which I've shown off this ratcheting screwdriver set, I have lamented the fact that I do not have the bits. That being said, I went on the Snap-on truck the other day, you know, because I got a new hat, as I do pretty much every time I go on the truck. I also got a couple other freebies, namely this ring toss game, which I actually brought this to the most recent Buffalo Bills game, and we actually had a lot of fun playing this. So that was a cool freebie. Another freebie was this Snap-on beach towel. Now this thing's pretty big. I'm not gonna be able to fully unfurl it and show it to you, but it's pretty cool, don't you think? I don't know if my wife thinks it's as cool as I do, but what can you do? In any event, what did I have to do in order to bring home all this quote-unquote free stuff? Well, that's what's in this case right here. But before we get into that, let's go over some of the smaller things that I bought, and then we'll come back to it. So first things first, I have been looking for a Snap-on EDC light for quite some time, and I came across this little number on the truck. I was told this is new, which anyone who's ever been on a Snap-on truck can attest to the fact that they basically come out with new lights every week or so. I've got the neck light, I've got the magnetic lights, I have a lot of them. But this one I thought was really interesting from the point of view that I could stick this in my man purse and I think it would work pretty well. It's also got multiple functions on it, right? So of course, you have the light itself with a few different modes of brightness, which I really appreciate. But also, if you click this button up top, you're gonna get a little laser, which I don't want to point it directly at the camera and risk ruining the lens, but you can imagine why that could be interesting, right? I just did a video in which I had the laser for the distance measurer. This doesn't measure any distance, although could you imagine how cool that would be if you had not only a flashlight, but then the laser is a distance finder as well? That's a Snap-on. Why don't you guys get on that? But in any event, This light, model number ECPNJ032, came in at an astounding $119, but that's just, of course, what you're getting with Snap-on. And but I'm honestly pretty happy about it. Do I think that this is like a go-to EDC, right? It's got the pocket clip. I assume most of the techs, right, the mechanics are going to have it up here. Maybe you're going to have it in your pocket. But if you're carrying any sort of sling bag, this could serve as a valuable EDC addition to that bag. I have long discussed this idea that I want to do a Snap-on EDC video specifically, and now I'm one step closer. Now at this point I have the pliers, I've got the pry bar, I've got the knife, and I've got the flashlight. So be on the lookout for that video here soon. The next thing that we picked up, and I sort of hinted at this earlier, is this flexible shank for your ratcheting screwdriver. Now, this was the last of the extensions that I needed to sort of complete my ratcheting screwdriver kit at a cost of about 30 bucks, and with the ability to close out the kit and of course pick up something that is made in the USA, I thought it was a pretty reasonable thing to do. So, you know, you could bend this thing pretty good. You can attach, this is quarter square at the top. So you throw your sockets on there, and now you've got all sorts of range of motion and means with which to extract a bolt from something. Next, and I'm running through this stuff a little quickly because I want to get into the box, obviously, I picked up a set of these Snap-on Allen keys. I was at someone's house the other day, and they were disassembling a piece of furniture because they had sold it on Facebook Marketplace, and someone was coming to pick it up. And I didn't have a set of Allen keys on me other than this sort of multi-tool thing that I keep in my truck. And I said to myself, you know, I hate the fact that I don't have the right Allen key for the job. So why don't we pick up some Snap-on Allen keys? Now this, you know, all things being considered, is probably reasonably priced, right? I mean, this is 60 bucks for, what do you get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 keys. And of course they've got this ball on the end so that, I think the way this works is you click it out and go like that. You can come onto the bolt with this head, and you can move this around in a number of different orientations so that if you can't get directly on, in which case you're probably just using this, or if you're going vertical, you can tilt it, right? And it gives you just a little bit more purchase and an opportunity to extract something that you may not otherwise be able to. Next, now this is something that I've already shown on the channel once before, but I had to buy another one. So this is the Snap-on plier rack. They make these, and I want to say 3 different sizes in total, with this one being the biggest. This is a 30-inch plier rack. So they are, if I recall, a little bit thinner on this side than they are over here. So you have different thickness pliers. You can sort of taper them downwards. I do already have one of these 30-inch plier racks in my plier drawer in my toolbox, but it's full, and as I add more pliers or just redefine what it means to be a plier, right? Like I want to store scissors in here, for example. I don't, right now they're just sort of strewn about in the box, whereas I'd like to have them a little bit more neatly put together. All right, and with all the small stuff out of the way, let's talk about the box. Now, when it comes to kits like this, right, stuff that's in the foam, the truck can be hit or miss, and Snap-on is hit or miss. Certainly, I can't find this on their website, so I don't know how they decide who gets what, or maybe this is something that, I think they just had like a Snap-on convention. Maybe this is something that my rep picked up there. I have no idea. All I know is I saw it on the truck and I was like, you're coming home with me. So, let's get this thing open. It is 38 Snap-on bits. You have your SAE, you've got your metrics, you've got your flats, miscellaneous, Torx, square, and Phillips. Now, the red blow molded case that I was referring to earlier, I think that one has 33 bits, but you get a few more adapters, right? And of course, with respect to adapters, the first thing you're asking is, well, what's going to go up there? But maybe you already know the answer. The thing that I've always lamented about this, again, not only just the fact that I don't have the bits, but this is sold as like this grab and go solution. The problem is you're not really grabbing and going with much because, well, there's no bits. So now as we transition and we put the handle in, and we take the 9-inch shank and we put that in, and the 5-inch shank and put that in, and then the quarter to quarter, we put that in. The 2-inch, which sort of permanently lives in my Mini, That can go there. And now all of a sudden, what have we done? We've turned this into something that's truly grab and go. Now, this thing has room for 2 more bits here. This is quarter hex to quarter hex. I didn't choose to buy that. I don't really think I need it, but I already have one that's not Snap-on, so we could throw that in there. And then this little number just says miscellaneous. But I thought to myself, you know, what would be really nice is if you could throw a few sockets on there, and now you could solve all sorts of problems. So that little miscellaneous compartment will fit our 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14 millimeter Snap-on sockets. Now, of course, those are the shallow variety. If you go something different, maybe it's a little thicker, I don't know. But nonetheless, that's what you're getting inside of this case. Snap it up, and you have a true grab and go solution. So I really appreciate this design. It was, I think, marginally more expensive to go this route than it would have been to go with the red blow molded case. But for that additional price, you're getting, I think, 5 additional bits. You get this fancy Snap-on case, and you're getting the foam, right? The foam costs money. There's just no 2 ways about it. But especially for stuff like this, I don't think you can go wrong. Do you want 38 bits strewn about? No. And do you want the blow molded case? Maybe, but this, in terms of its lettering, legibility, this, I think, provides a lot of benefits. And the first thing I want to share with you all is the 10-foot Snap-on tape measure that I picked up in the high vis. Now, it's funny, of all the Snap-on stuff that I bought and unboxed on this channel, the tape measures are the thing that gets seemingly the most comments. For whatever reason, Snap-on tape measures are the most polarizing thing that Snap-on offers. Now, that being said, I love these things. So the one I use the most so far, obviously I haven't used this yet, but the one I use the most is a 16-footer. What I really like about it is that it has the magnet so it sticks on my workbench. I am not on a job site, so having a belt clip, it doesn't really matter to me. The other thing that I like is the auto locking feature. I'm of the opinion that I really don't want any tape measure that doesn't have auto locking anymore. I don't know if there's a reason why you shouldn't have it on certain applications, but to me it just makes a ton of sense. The third thing that I like about it is that the markings, these are on both sides. So this is the back, this is the front, so whether you're upside down or whatever, you can always see the markings. Of course, this is a nylon wrapped blade, and these features are the same across all of the tape measures, regardless of size. So this green one is the one I find myself grabbing for most often. Now, I also have the 25-footer, so for situations that arise in which I need this amount of length, I have it, but generally the sweet spot is right here in the middle. Now, this one also has the auto locking. It doesn't have the stuff underneath. I think that's probably okay, right, at 25 feet. I don't know how often you're gonna be at that length and needing to look upside down. This one also has a button down here, which is pretty cool. And that's contrary to this one and that one, which do not have such a button. And this one has the belt clip as opposed to the magnet. So why did I pick up this little 10-footer? Chances are this is gonna be in my truck with me the majority of the time. I bought my wife, she's got this little Milwaukee tape measure that we really like. It's, I think, a 6-footer. It actually just fits on a keychain. And, you know, honestly, I think she uses it a fair bit, shopping for the home and whatnot. So having these little tape measures handy is generally useful. So this will probably stay in the truck. It's more like an EDC item for me. In fact, I actually recorded a whole video talking about like different EDC measuring devices. I never posted it, but I probably should. Anyway, this has the magnet on the back, like I said. This is auto locking, which my experience has been that with the smaller tape measures, most of them are not auto locking. So I thought that was pretty cool. Again, the markings are on the front and the back. This is 10 foot in length. They also sell one of these in a 3-meter variety. So if you're looking for metric, you could do that. I have all of these in SAE because I kind of know fractions. Not really. And at this point, unless there's, you know, some major technical advancements in tape measures, I'm probably pretty well set, right? I've got my small, medium, and large, and they each have their own place in my shop. Moving on, let's actually talk about clothing. So obviously, you know, I get all these Snap-on hats every time I go on the truck, and I actually have a couple more today, but I have something I want to share with you all, and you could tell me what your interest is. But I've never bought any other type of clothing on the truck, right? Now that being said, I have been buying these Snap-on cotton socks for far longer than I've been buying Snap-on tools. I had a friend who told me one time, you know, I give Snap-on socks to people for Christmas every year. They're the best socks ever. They're super warm and durable and whatnot. And at that time, I wasn't buying Snap-on tools. I didn't have a truck that I could go to. So I was just buying these on eBay. And I think on eBay, they're cheaper. I think I'm getting, I don't know, 3 pairs for 50 bucks, something in that range, which of course is still expensive. But, you know, when you get into premium socks, pricing is interesting. Nonetheless, I've been buying these forever. I'm wearing a pair right now. They are my favorite socks, and in the winter, you will find me wearing these every single day. Now in the truck, he had these cotton ones, but he also had these merino wool socks. Now, on a recent video in which I talk about my wife's EDC kit in her vehicle, I shared that I have an extra pair of these Snap-on socks in there, and they're really just in case of an emergency, right? Now, it was funny because at a recent Buffalo Bills game, I was wearing these socks, but my boots were so tight that my feet were sweating a little bit. That was compounded by the fact that it was 8 degrees during our tailgate and about the same within the game. And at one point, I mean, it felt like my feet were becoming icicles. Right? I was sweating, but it was freezing. Luckily, I had an extra pair of these, so I actually swapped pairs in the parking lot before I went into the game so that I would have a fresh, dry pair. But coincidentally, somebody left a comment on the video about my wife's EDC kit saying, you should consider wool because cotton, when it's wet, can kill. And I don't know if that's exactly what he meant, you know, in terms of like my situation, but certainly I was not having a lot of fun wearing these cotton socks where my feet were sweating, but it was also 8 degrees outside. So now I've got a nice pair of these wool jobbers. Now I think that a single pair of these is about 20 bucks. What do you say, right? They're socks, they're branded Snap-on, they're made out of merino wool, and I'm excited to give them a try. I think that in certain situations, like, you know, the Bills game, or if I have to use the snowblower here today, we're gonna get 10 inches, so this is probably the right sock for the job to clean up the snow. But what are your thoughts, right? I want to hear from the folks that actually, you know, work outside and experience the elements. What is the best work sock? Fill me in. I'm eager to learn. But for now, while I have many pairs of these cotton ones, this is my only pair of the wool socks. I got size large. You know, I don't know what else there is to say, right? Ultra soft, natural heating and cooling, blah, blah, blah. They're socks, but if they're anything like the cotton ones, they're going to be pretty awesome. Now, it wouldn't be a Snap-on unboxing if I didn't buy a Snap-on light. I just can't help myself when I go on the truck. They come out with a new light seemingly every single week. Now, luckily, I have been really happy so far with the lights that I've purchased, right? The big one behind me there, you can maybe see it down there. I was using that the other day. It magnetized to the frame, like the roll cage of the Kawasaki Mule, because I was doing some work on the battery. So that was nice. The neck light, the Snap-on neck light, I wear that almost every time I'm in the garage. I find myself needing it for something. The other day I was swapping out this like, it's like a plastic plate on your truck bed, right? To basically cover the step stool, and I don't really know how to explain it, but it had broken off and I needed a new one, and on that part of the garage it's much darker than it is on this side, right? I have more lighting over here so I can do videos, and this is obviously where I do projects, but over there it's hard to see, so you put the neck light on and easy peasy. So I have a lot of their lights. I'm generally very happy with all the lights that I've purchased. And then I saw this one, and I'll be honest, it's not that this light struck me as like, oh my God, this is a fantastic light, I'm gonna use it all the time. But I have been yearning for building a Snap-on EDC kit. And I've mentioned this in many videos, but the flashlight was one of the 2 items that I had remaining before I could do that. So this light has 2 modes. You've got a single power switch, that's low, that's high, and it also has a laser pointer. So I don't want to ruin our video there, but it has a laser pointer. I don't know the degree to which I'm going to use the laser pointer other than for, I don't know, annoying people or things, but cool nonetheless. It does have the pocket clip. It's USB-C rechargeable. 350 lumens, and the website says 3.5 hours of runtime. I don't know if that's at the high mode or the low mode. I'm going to assume it's the low mode. So it's not the brightest light in the world, but what I was thinking to myself is, you know, I carry the alpaca flight sling, like my vertical sling bag that I have, and I think that this could fit in there pretty nicely. Today I have the Olight Baton in there, which has also been a really nice light. The thing that I don't like about the Olight Baton is that it has a proprietary charging mechanism, right? So instead of using USB-C or something that everybody already has, you have this like special puck that goes on the bottom of the light, which means if you're without that special charging puck and that light dies, you're in trouble. Whereas, you know, my phone has USB-C, the iPads, everything has USB-C now. And so this is maybe a little bit nicer. It's still a little bit big, but we're getting there. Now, in terms of the Snap-on EDC kit that I yearn to build over time, like I said, there's two things that are missing, right? So for me, when I say an EDC kit, I'm saying one, you have to have a pry bar. Obviously, we've got the Snap-on pry bar. I've got a couple of these. This is the one with the bent nose there at the end, but they also have a flat one, which I also have. So you have to have a pry bar. This is a little thin, but I found that it works just fine. You have to have a knife. Now, Snap-on doesn't make their own knives, but this is at least a CRKT rebranded Snap-on knife, which is pretty cool. So we've got the knife, we've got the pry bar. You need a pliers. So I have this set that I had purchased for the express intent of carrying these things around. Now, there's 3 different pliers in here, right? You've got your sort of traditional slip joints, if you wanted to carry these with you on a daily basis. Now, I believe they make these in both a dipped and non-dipped, so you can get whatever you're most interested in, but they have that version. They've got these, which are like the shrunken down, sort of do-it-all, needle nose, tail and grip, slip joint, whatever. And then finally in this kit, this is just a regular old bolt turner, right? It's got the graduations there, so you can actually fit a nut in there. This is probably a little bit more specialized than EDC, but you know, if you wanted to, you could. And of course, you can carry multiples of these, but that's what I have for now. So you've got the plier, I've got the knife, I've got the pry bar, I've got the light. The only thing I'm still missing is a screwdriver. Now I ordered, Snap-on makes, it kind of looks a lot like this with this similar handle, and then it's just got a single reversible bit here at the end. They make it in, I think, red, orange, and green. I have ordered all 3 of them from my dealer, and none of them have ever shown up. So someday, when that screwdriver does show up, not only will I actually test carrying all this stuff as my EDC kit for some time, but I'll also make a video about it. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. All right, and then the last thing we're gonna talk about, it's actually 2 items, but I can't share one without kind of telling you the other. So we're gonna dismiss with the dispense and talk about the most expensive Snap-on tool I've ever bought. And that would be this 1/4 inch tech angle torque wrench. Now I haven't even unboxed it yet, so let's grab our Snap-on CRKT knife and take it out of its packaging. So my dealer has had this on the truck before, but never in the green foam. And even if he did have it in the green foam, I was always waffling back and forth like, man, do I really need to spend all this money on a torque wrench? Again, I'm not a professional. I don't rebuild engines. I don't do any of this stuff. I'm not gonna use this every single day, I can guarantee it. That being said, when I was doing my maintenance this fall on the boat to get it ready to winterize, and I'm removing the spark plugs and the oil and all this stuff, you know, everything has a torque spec. And currently, the only torque wrench that I have is this beefy old boy from Tekton, right? So this is a 1/2 inch torque wrench. I've said this before, but I mean, I bought this before I even knew what a torque wrench was, right? I just knew that people use them and I wanted one, so I bought this one from Tekton on Amazon, and I don't know, 50, 60, 70 bucks. Something in that range. Now, this is proven useful because every single spring when I change the blades on my lawnmower, I torque them down with this. The propeller on the boat, that has a torque spec. I use this. And if you've been watching the videos for any period of time, you know that the reason I bought this Snap-on 1/2 inch socket set was specifically for this purpose, right? It's that I don't use this stuff every day. When I do, I want it to be high quality and I want it to be made in the USA. And these sockets are for this torque wrench. But fast forward, right? So I'm doing this work on the boat and I'm replacing the spark plugs. And the spark plugs have a torque spec. The problem is I don't have, I guess, a 1/2 inch to 3/8 adapter, and I didn't have either a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 torque wrench. So I torqued them down with my hand as best as I could, and I just sort of decided, you know what? So I'm heavily invested in the 1/4-inch socket game. This is my you know, deep, semi-deep, and shallow collection from Snap-on. These are the metric sockets. I don't have them in SAE, but I'm sure someday I will. And I don't really have anything Snap-on in 3/8 because I've always said, you know, I've got most of everything I'm going to do is with those 1/4-inch sockets. I have the 1/2-inch ones because sometimes you run into bigger stuff, but I don't really want to buy, you know, 3/8 just so that I have it because I don't know the degree to which I really need it. All this to say, what I decided was I'm going to buy a 1/4-inch torque wrench to complement my 1/2-inch torque wrench, but then I'm going to buy a 1/4-inch to 3/8 adapter for this torque wrench. So for example, I've got this Snap-on, now I didn't buy this on the Snap-on truck, this is actually my grandfather's. This is a universal 13/16 spark plug socket. And now, thanks to my trusty adapter, I could throw that on there and we can throw our torque wrench on there, right? Because again, for my applications, what am I doing? I'm mostly doing spark plugs, I'm doing drain plugs, simple stuff, right? We're not doing engine stuff or anything like that. So now I have access to that. And then on the boat, what I was actually using, and thank God I had these because accessing the spark plugs on the boat was a challenge. But this set is the Astro magnetic spark plug socket set. So these are fantastic. You get, I believe, 15 degrees of rotation here. Obviously it's got a built-in extension, and then the inside is magnetic. So when you actually retrieve the spark plug, it's not going to fall out on you. So I was using these, and specifically the 4th spark plug on the boat is just such a pain to get to. In fact, I not only had to use this, I also had to use another universal swivel from Snap-on just to get it out, but I'm thankful that I have the right tool for the job. But in any case, right, now I've got this, right? So I can do all my torquing and I'm pretty happy. Now the first thing that I picked up is something I had ordered months and months and months ago, but it was on back order and it was only very recently that the dealer finally got it in. And it is the Snap-on pocket screwdriver. Now I'm not sure the rate at which mechanics are carrying this thing around in their front pocket and actually using it, but for an EDC guy like me, this is perfect. Of course, it's made in the USA. It does have a pocket clip, and then it's got this reversible bit. You've got a Phillips #2 up top, you've got a 1/2-inch slotted down below, and the bit is also made in the USA. Now, the current screwdriver that I EDC is this Hoto Precision Beauty. This thing, you pull out the top, it's got all these precision bits, you put the top back in, and your handle is able to rotate. From an EDC point of view, one of the goals that I have moving forward is I want to lighten the load. I'm carrying a lot of stuff, and I end up using the same things over and over and over again. So I partially wanted the Snap-on screwdriver to see if just having these 2 bits, right, slotted in Phillips #2 would suffice. Of course, sometimes when you have to fix eyeglasses and stuff, you need something like this. But I can also just carry a little eyeglass screwdriver, for an example. Now, the most exciting part about this pickup is that I now have everything I need to do my Snap-on EDC video in comparison. That is the Snap-on equivalent to whatever I'm carrying today, and I want to compare these things across weight, price, functionality, etc. Because of course I have the Snap-on CRKT rebranded knife. I've got this flashlight, which, you know, it's not EDC from the point of view that this isn't that slim, but it turns out this actually weighs a little bit less than the current Olight baton that I carry. I've also got the Snap-on pry bar, which I've had for quite a while. Of course, they make this in the straight, and then they've got the angled version. And of course, we've got our Snap-on pliers. Now, these pliers actually came out of this kit. It remains to be seen which of these 3 I'll end up EDCing. They all have their use cases. Chances are it's going to be this one because I think this is the most versatile in that you get both the needle nose and you get the wider jaws down at the bottom. And of course, this is just a mini version of, what is it, the LN 46, 47 ACF, something like that. Of course, made in the USA, and they do make these in a dipped handle as well. But the Snap-on EDC comparison video will be a separate one, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss it. Next up, we have our set of Snap-on non-marring picks. Now, you folks are probably gonna laugh at me for the reason that I bought these, but the crown of my watch had been getting quite dirty, was building up with a lot of stuff. And even though I clean this, I don't know, maybe monthly, and I basically just use an old soft bristle toothbrush and some Dawn dish soap, the gunk that was building up in the crown is something that I couldn't get off. So I knew Snap-on made these. They had been on my wish list for quite a while, right? I view them as more of like a potential detailing type tool. And so I just decided I would bite the bullet and buy them. I think they're around 20 bucks, maybe 25 total, which is a little expensive. And the other thing is I'm not certain that the warranty kicks in because I'm not sure if these are considered a consumable or not. I suppose it doesn't really matter until and unless I need to make use of the warranty, then I'll see what the dealer has to say, but that's what I bought these picks for. And they work quite nicely, right? You can get in there. Of course, when I was doing this, I had my little loop on so I could see what I was doing, but it just allows you to clean between the tines there of the crown, and it worked quite nicely. So you have this 45-degree jabber. You've got this little hook here. Now these things are exceedingly sharp. Ask me how I know. You've got another, looks like another 45-degree, but perhaps a little bit thicker than this one, and then a straight tip here at the end. And then finally, with your third and final one, you get another one of the hook pieces. Again, similar theme, just a little bit thicker than this one, and another straight jobber that is has a slightly different profile. This one looks a bit more tapered as opposed to this one, which is a bit more, I suppose, cylindrical. So that's the reason I picked these up. I'm very curious to know, like, in the automotive field, what are professional mechanics using these for? Now, the answer is maybe nothing. I mean, I've never actually seen these on the truck. I had to place the order, and then my dealer was able to order them for me. So let me know in the comments what you mechanics are using these for. Sticking with the non-marring theme, while I was on the truck, I came across this set of Snap-on's non-marring scrapers. Now this is another thing that had been on the wish list for a while, but I never really ordered it because I already have a set of scrapers. I bought them on Amazon. They're pretty cheap, and primarily what I use those for is scraping stickers off of stuff. But I saw that he had these on the truck, so I figured I'd pick them up. These are made in the USA, right? So I know that some of the Snap-on products are not made in the USA, and especially stuff like this tends not to be, but they are, so I was really happy about that. You get 5 scrapers in total, and then you can actually buy this bag on the Snap-on website. I think the bag itself is like $10, but this whole kit with the 5 scrapers in the bag is 60 bucks. So honestly, it was a little bit pricey, but I thought it was worth it. And in fact, as I was getting ready to shoot this video, I had to use this. So I have a plastic cover on the cameras of my iPhone, which cracked recently because I dropped it, which I'm not super thrilled about. And I went to take it off because it was interfering with the video capture capabilities, but I couldn't do it with just my finger. I tried a few different pry tools, and I was like, oh, but I have this beautiful angled non-marring scraper. And sure enough, this was able to fit under there just enough to give me a little bit of leverage and pop it off. So that was nice. Now on Snap-on's website, they say that these handles are, I guess, made to be hit with a hammer. They don't call it a striking cap specifically, right? Of course, it's not any sort of like reinforced metal. It is plastic, but theoretically they're pretty well made, and you could probably bang it with a rubber mallet of some kind to give you a bit extra purchase on whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So with the set, you're gonna get 2 straight blade scrapers, again, just slightly different widths. You're gonna get 2 curved scrapers, again, different profiles, just depends on what the job kind of calls for. And then finally, you're gonna get this angled jabber that sort of meets here at the top. So a little on the pricier side, honestly, for what it is, but it was made in the USA, so I was willing to bite the bullet. If this is one of those products that Snap-on makes that was not made in the USA, I probably wouldn't have gone forward and stuck with the made in China stuff that I already have. So before we get into the crown jewel of today's purchase, why don't we talk about that thing that I got secondhand? Now, from a socket point of view, I already have more sockets than I could ever possibly need. And if you've been watching the channel for a while, what you'll know is that the reason I bought sockets to begin with is that for years, all I had was a 1/4 inch socket set. I think it had 7 sockets in total. That's all I had, and it seemed like that was all I would ever need. But then the day came where I was changing out the cabin air filter in my truck, and I didn't have the socket that I needed to complete the job. This infuriated me, and so what I decided to do was I bought a 300-piece Husky mechanic set, basically from Home Depot. And then only later, as I got more toys that I work on, and as I developed this affinity for Snap-on, I basically decided that over time, what I was going to aim to do is replace everything that I had from that Husky set with the made in USA equivalent either at Snap-on or at another retailer. So one of the first things that I bought off the Snap-on truck in service of the goal, right, of replacing some of that older stuff with some of the newer stuff, whether it's made by Snap-on or just another premium brand, was this shallow, semi-deep, and deep 1/4-inch socket set from Snap-on. Now I've used this a fair bit, right? It is a metric set. Everything I work on is pretty much metric. Now, am I using every single one of these? Absolutely not. But the ones that I do need, I do use them. And of course, I'm thrilled with this set, right? These are the flank drive sockets. They're thin walled. They come in the foam. Beautiful. Love it. Now, I bought the 1/4-inch specifically because while mechanics who are working on cars all day are, I think, mostly dealing in 3/8, I felt like 1/4-inch was sort of perfect for me, right? I appreciate the smaller stuff, the way it feels in my hand, and I haven't found too many instances where it's been a hindrance, although in cases where I have, I've adjusted, which again, I have separate videos to cover. But all that being said, I was in no hurry to step up my 3/8 game. That is until I walked into the pawn shop the other day and I found this little beauty. So this is the Snap-on 3/8 deep set of flank drive 6-point sockets. And this retails on the Snap-on website for $391. Now, whether or not that price is high or low is up to the individual to decide, but at the pawn shop, they had it listed for $175. So right off the bat, we're already saving 50%. Now, these are used, right? Some, of course, more than others, right? You can see the 10 mil has been used quite a bit. But even at $175, I still feel like it was a pretty good deal. Now, my wife and I go to the same pawn shop all the time, so the guy kind of remembers me, and he knows my routine of, hey, what's your best price on this set? And then he gives me the number, and I sort of hem and haw, and then he lowers it a little bit more. So anyway, I ended up walking out the door with this set for $130, which I think is fantastic, right? What is it? 75% off, something like that, for made in USA, high quality tools. All I'm really ever gonna do in terms of cleaning these up is I have like a brass wire wheel that I'll put on the drill press, and it's like the cylindrical head, so you just kind of chuck these up there and clean out the insides, and we're kind of done. As far as this magnetic case goes, this will just kind of go into long-term storage, but I mean, the magnets are pretty strong, right? I was playing with this in the store and obviously right now, so there's value there. It's just that because I already have some organizers, I'm not necessarily going to keep this in the box, but I think that's a value unto itself as well. And frankly, I could probably sell this magnetic case if I really wanted to. So I still have a ways to go in terms of building out the rest of my socket collection to be either Snap-on, Baco, Craftsman, something made in USA. But at this price point, and for a very modern example, right? I can often find stuff at estate sales that's made in USA, but it's far older, whereas this has all the sort of latest technology, and again, it got it at 75% off, which I was pretty happy with. And then the last thing we're going to talk about today is the crown jewel of today's purchase, which was Snap-on nut drivers. Now, it seems to me like the use of a nut driver is sort of a forgotten, not art form, but it just doesn't seem like something people do that much anymore, at least professional mechanics, right? Everybody's got the sockets. I watch Toolbox Tours all day, every day, right? I love that channel, Toolbox Tours. Someday, maybe he's gonna want to tour this toolbox, we'll see. But nobody has nut drivers. They all just have millions and millions of sockets. As a DIYer, again, I have all the sockets that I need, and I'm continuing to buy more and more, so I also probably don't need these, but the reason that I wanted these was arguably somewhat specific, and that is for hose clamps. Now, how did I go down this hose clamp rabbit hole and the use of nut drivers as the proper mechanism? I would say two reasons. Number one is I use hose clamps all over the place, on the boat, on my sandblast cabinet, on my lawnmower, buggy. I have hose clamps kind of everywhere. When you thread down a hose clamp with a flathead screwdriver, I am 100% guaranteed that you will not be able to thread it all the way down before it slips out of there, which is just an annoyance, right? But one time I was doing this on the boat and I dropped that flathead screwdriver in the water. Now, of course, that is user error. I wouldn't mean to suggest otherwise, but because you don't have great purchase, right? And especially if you're in a hurry, which unfortunately I seem like I always am, you can run into that situation. The second reason is another YouTube channel that I watch religiously is Adam Savage's Tested channel, right? I love his one-day builds. I love his tool talk, right? I feel like I learn a ton. And his recommendation for dealing with hose clamps is nut drivers. And I suppose the third reason that I would want something like this is when you're putting together furniture, whether it's from IKEA or otherwise, they give you just the world's worst tools. And so that's probably what I'm gonna use these for as well, right? So for 300 bucks, again, I'm sure some of you are watching this and you're laughing. You're like, oh, this guy, he's such a sucker. Why does he keep spending all this money on Snap-on? And I don't really know what to tell you other than I love the foam. I appreciate that it's made in the USA, and I know that it's a super high quality tool that will last me many lifetimes, which is why I'm willing to make the investment. Now this set will fit in a 2-inch drawer, so if that's all you have, you're in luck. I'm gonna probably put this with like my screwdrivers and everything else. I really wanna go through and kind of organize my toolbox a little bit more, but separate video. The other thing that's nice about the set, so this is the SAE set. They do sell this in metric. The SAE one, the handles are color coded. I'm not exactly sure like why green is 11/30 seconds, right? Or why black is 3/16. Maybe there's some logical reason for that, but I just don't know what it is. The metric set, on the other hand, all the handles are black. So I may or may not pick up that metric set someday just to sort of complete the collection. Of course, what I really appreciate is just that it's available in the foam. I think, you know, Snap-on, again, more of their marketing, right? They do a good job of, you want the foam, you can't have the foam, you got to buy this set, that set, etc. But when they have stuff that's in it, I generally like to jump on it. So that was all of our pickups from the most recent Snap-on truck, as well as the pawn shop. As far as free items, we did get this pretty sweet Snap-on mug. I think this thing is actually made of glass though, which scares me a little bit. I think it's a little bit see-through, so I don't want to drop this because if it shatters, it's going to be kind of a pain to clean it up. So that's what we got today. He did have this really cool neon light. It wasn't actually neon, I'm sure just LEDs with the rubber, but it was a beautiful Snap-on racing light. And he wasn't selling it by itself. Instead, you had to buy a kit. And for the first time, maybe ever, I did demonstrate some restraint in not purchasing it. But who knows how long that's really going to last. And first up is this guy. This is Snap-on's new 1/4-inch stubby ratchet that accepts hex head bits. Now this is relatively new, and when it was first announced, it was, I guess, sold out on the Snap-on website pretty much immediately. Although I checked this evening and it looks like it's available. So if you want to get your hands on one of these, you should be able to now. And of course, instead of accepting sockets, this accepts hex head bits. So you're not limited by the sockets that you have, but rather the bits. So you've got your Torx and Robertsons and Phillips and flatheads and, you know, you name it, there's a bit for it, of course. In this case, I've got like a long T20 from Milwaukee on here, but of course, you could put this short Milwaukee, Robertson, and Snap-on makes bits. Everybody makes bits, and they all work just the same. Now I have the 1/4-inch ratchet in the stubby as well, and on this one I have the spanner. Now, as far as I know, they don't make something like this for something like this. I suppose they could. I don't know if you need it, but just so you know. And of course, this one has the quick release, whereas this one doesn't, but there's no ball detent on these bits anyway, so you don't really need it. But obviously, these are going to be pretty pricey for what they are, but I just couldn't pass it up. Other than the fact that one takes a hex head and one takes a socket, the design is the exact same, right? I think all they did was swap this out and get rid of the quick release, and everything else is pretty much identical. Now, as far as like the flex head itself, I'm not really sure the degree to which it matters. At the end of the day, your hand is going to be the limiting factor in most of your use cases. For me, I think I'm mostly going to like kind of use it here, right? Sort of a, I guess, 4-finger approach. You could make a full fist if you wanted to, but this is for applications where you don't need a ton of leverage anyway. You're in a tight space, and so a couple fingers, probably all you need. And if you need more than that, it's probably not the right tool for the job. Next up on our purchase list, we have yet another light. Now, the person who works on lights at Snap-on must have the greatest job security in the world, because every single time you go onto that truck, you are guaranteed that they came out with a brand new light. 52 lights a year at least. So pretty incredible stuff. This one I picked up because, as you know, and of course I just made a mess out of this box. This one I picked up because I am working on building out what I'm referring to as the Snap-on EDC Kit, right? So you've got your knife, your pliers, your screwdriver, your pry bar, and arguably most importantly, the flashlight. Now, the flashlight that I have from Snap-on that I thought would be the sort of EDC flashlight is this one. So it's got this semi-deep belt clip. It of course has multiple modes, and it's got a laser pointer, which I showed this once before, but it's a pretty cool light. It's relatively slim in profile, and up till the point I bought this, I thought that this was the slimmest Snap-on light that you could buy. Perhaps there's some rebranded stuff that's different, but I think this was about the slimmest that you could buy. That is until I came on the truck and I saw this thing. Now this little light only has 2 modes, right? So you've got low and high, and I think at low you're about 30 lumens, at high you're 85 lumens. So in neither case are you getting like a ton of light, but the trade-off that you're making with something like this is just slimness of profile, right? Now, for me, from an EDC flashlight point of view, this is going to satisfy the majority of use cases, right? Now, from a tactical flashlight point of view, not really going to solve that problem. But I saw Doc over at Last Best Tool just did a video on the Nightcore new flashlight, and that's probably more so what you're going to want from a tactical point of view, right? It's got the strobing and really high lumen output, like 1100 for 20 seconds or something like that. That's not what this is, right? This is you drop something in between the seat cushions in your car, it's late at night, and you just need to get down there and see if you can't figure it out. So I bought it for that purpose. It's USB-C rechargeable. Of course, it's made in China, and it's another Snap-on flashlight, right? I probably didn't need it. I don't think it was that expensive, but this is definitely the best light that I've found for building an EDC kit from Snap-on. Now, changing gears slightly, every time I go into the Snap-on truck, he has a pre-owned tools drawer. I always look in there, and usually it's like air tools and stuff that I just have no interest in whatsoever. But this time, he actually had something that was compelling to me. And that is 2 separate Snap-on Allen wrench sets. Now, they come in these metal cases, right? This one actually has the plate to tell you what's in here. This one, the plate has since fallen off, but maybe we could 3D print something to replace it. And both of them were missing some number of Allen keys. So I imagine that at one point in time, somebody probably had this on their toolbox just like this, and at some point they lost some number of these Allen keys and never thought to replace them. Now, when I brought this to the dealer and I said, well, how much is it? Because the stuff in the pre-owned bucket isn't tagged, and obviously you can't look it up on his computer per se because it's not on the website. But he shocked me when he said $10 for both. I don't think I said sold quicker ever in my life. Now, Allen wrenches are just one of those things. I have tons of these, right? I keep them all over the place, but I just don't think you can ever have enough of them. And honestly, for me, this metal tray or box that they came in is probably just worth the $10 by itself, honestly. So again, they are missing a few, and chances are maybe I'll try to replace them at some point in time. I also need to clean them up. They're a little dirty, as you might expect from a pre-owned tool. But otherwise, I think that they're all in relatively good shape. I actually just used one the other day, which is why it's missing to tighten down a bolt on my office chair. So I always like to check out the pre-owned bin when I get there. Most of the time, there's nothing interesting, but this time, there was. Now, when I first got onto the truck, there was one very specific thing that I had in mind. And in fact, I texted the dealer before I got there and said, hey, do you have this? And that is this RTD48 rethreading kit. Now, as with all things that I buy as a DIYer, I don't need a rethreader kit per se, nor do I need the Snap-on equivalent. But this one is awesome, and I think I saw somewhere online that maybe this is rebranded from like an old Craftsman or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, you've got your coarse, fine, and metric. Of course, this one is missing because I was just using it. But the reason I bought this is if you're working on vehicles, my assumption is like stuff like this comes in super handy and can get you out of a lot of jams, right? If you take a bolt down and it's a little stripped, you can use this to clean them up and save yourself the day. Whereas if you don't have something like this, you're talking about a whole different set of operations. In my case, what I found is that I come across bolts in the home that could use this sort of cleaning. And in fact, as you hopefully will see in this B-roll, I don't know if I recorded it well, but I had a base stand for an umbrella. The screw that was in there, I could only get it out with a pair of vice grips. It would not turn. It was rusted solid. And so as I'm getting it out with the vice grip, it's just chewing up sort of whatever was in there. Once I did get it out though, I was able to clean up the bolt good enough to figure out the thread size. Then I wire wheeled the inner portion of where the screw goes. Then I used the corresponding rethread to clean it up, and now my umbrella stand is good as new. And the reason I was just using this one was, again, going back to that office chair. The bolt had come loose, and I don't know how the threads got damaged. Maybe I'm just banging on the armrest all day long. But in any case, I brought this down there and was able to clean it up, and everything is working as you'd expect again. This is one of those kits that actually, for the price, I I wasn't taken aback. I thought it was reasonably priced. Obviously, I think this is a beautiful case for it to exist within. Everything is very well labeled. You've got different colors denoting whether it's coarse, fine, or metric is gold. And then you've got these files, right? So you can find your thread pitch information here and then go along the bolts themselves to clean them. And I think that's especially useful in cases where it's where there's a problem lower down on the bolt where you can't even get it started in something like this, right? But this was what I went on there to pick up originally. And of course, again, this is not for cutting new threads. I do have a tap and die set that I bought on Amazon a while back. I haven't used it a ton, although I did use it the other day for what could be considered a questionable electrical project, but I didn't make a video about that, so we're all good there. But all to say, I think this is a fantastic kit. I think stuff like this will come around, or come in handy rather, around the house more so than you think, and that's really the reason I picked it up. And the last thing on our buying spree that I promised Doc at Last But Tool that I was not going to buy are the Snap-on 10-inch water pipe pliers. Now, when these first came out, the reason I said I wasn't going to buy them is that they're made in Spain, so they're a Baco product. And generally speaking, the reason I'm buying the Snap-on stuff is I want to replace the tools in my toolbox with stuff that's made in the USA. But in this case, once I got in the truck and he had them, obviously I couldn't say no. And it's funny because when I left the comment on Doc's video, he said, "Peter, you and I both know you're going to own those someday." So he was right as per usual. But one thing I'll say is that these are going to be, I think, mostly compared to the comparable version of the Knipex over here. I've had these for a long time. I've used them a fair bit. They live in my Vito Pro Pack toolkit, which I made a video about way back, long before I ever even maybe heard of Snap-on, but definitely before I started buying Snap-on. And these are fantastic pliers, right? I mean, these are the industry standard. Right off the bat, the things that I prefer about this over this is, number one, is the grips, right? Whether it's the Icon knockoffs or stuff like the Knipex, I just don't think anyone has come close to matching the comfortability of the Snap-on grip. They feel the best in your hand, and I think they offer the highest level of comfort. It's not to say that these are uncomfortable per se, and to be clear, there's never a case where I'm working with these things 8 hours a day, but for when I am working on them, I prefer this. And you can sort of see it in the grip. You can see I'm able to envelop this more, which arguably is going to give you a better purchase. But I think for extended use periods, it's going to also lead to greater fatigue. Now, at full length here, this is about a 2-inch opening, whereas with the Snap-on, this is a 2.5-inch opening. And in fact, on the Snap-on website, they make reference to the fact that they say that this opens 25% more than the leading competitor. They don't specify who that leading competitor is, but I'm assuming they're referring to Knipex. Additional differences, obviously this one has the push button to open and close it, whereas the Snap-on, you just hold it all the way out to move it up, hold it all the way out to push it down. So sort of a 6 of one, half dozen of the other. This is, I think, maybe a little bit easier to use, but I don't really know that I would be able to tell the difference. And of course, the business end of these tools is different in terms of shape and in terms of the serration of the teeth here. Specifically with respect to that serration, the Snap-on has the Talon grip here at the end, which is sort of table stakes for all of their pliers. I've found that to be a fantastic addition from a feature set point of view. Both of these, when you stare at them head on or closing all the way, I mean, they're both perfect, honestly, right? So these ones are, I think, a little bit cheaper. I don't remember the exact price that I paid for these or what they cost today. I think these are about 80 bucks. So made in Germany, made in Spain, you know the deal. So for me, this one will stay in the garage, this one will stay in the Vito Pro Pack. So if I run into a plumbing situation, which I do every now and then, even though I really don't like dealing with plumbing, I'll use these, and for everything else, I'll probably just rely on these. As for the swag on today's trip, we picked up 2 more hats, as per usual. And I did talk to the dealer about maybe finding some additional swag for us to be able to give away at a future live stream, which I have plans to do. So by the end of this summer, I'm promising all of you, I will be doing a tour of this toolbox. In fact, I need to do some rearranging in this garage. This toolbox is going to go over there, and I don't really know how that's going to impact my video production, but it's just something I'm gonna have to figure out with time. And then once I get it over there, I'm thinking we can do the full tour and you can all just sort of see what we're working with today. And then relating to that, I'm thinking my first live stream is, I'm just gonna kind of go over all of the Snap-on tools that I've bought in the last, I guess, 18 months since I started buying them. All right, so like I said, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video, it of course really helps. This is still a relatively small channel, so I appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you on the very next video.